What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmaker's Corner podcast. It is April 13th, 2026 when I am recording this intro for you. And we have episode 511. This is your 2026, I believe, week 9 Women's College Flag Football recap here. We're going to talk about all the games from April 6th, Monday, to Sunday, April 12th here. And there are some big games here. Some games that decided regular season conference champions and set the stage for the conference tournaments in a lot of leagues here this last week. And so a lot of good stuff to talk about. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, I got your JUCO recap from week 9. We got all the games from April 6th, Monday, to Sunday, the 12th here. So let's just go ahead and hop right into it. Starting with Monday, we had one game. Brighton Stratton would beat Rockford 42-12 here. NAIA and Gachang, who had 414 yards and 6 touchdowns, only 1 pick. That's your playmaker of the game right there. Just going crazy right there. You also had Tiana Guzman, who had 8 receptions for 154 yards and a touchdown. And then Alexa Knuckles, 8 receptions, 151 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns there. Aolani Andrade had 2 receptions for 62 yards and a receiving touchdown. Shout out Douglas County, Colorado. And then defensively, you had Darcy Matsuyama, who co-led with Sam Meyer with 8 flagpoles each. You had a sack from Jessica Tran, Jessica Tran and Gachang. And then you had interceptions from Gachang, Tiara Guzman, Alexa Knuckles, and Skylar Haas as they go ahead and take care of Rockford pretty easily there, 42-12. Moving on here to Wednesday, Florida Gateway would beat Andrew College 68-0. Going to the other coast here, Ventura would beat East Los Angeles College 67-0. Ava Ortman with a great freshman year, by the way. 5 passing touchdowns. 2 of those went to Honest Watson as well as to Naya Marino, each catching 2 there in that 67-0 win. Going on to Thursday, the 9th here, Irvine Valley would beat Golden West 35-0, and then Cypress would beat Saddleback in a close one, 20-19. All right, now moving on till Friday here, we have Hartford Community College back on the East Coast here. They would play Lancaster Bible in that big tournament and would beat them 24-0. Breonna Taylor, 146 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, but also 86 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, who is probably your playmaker of the game right there. Breonna Carter, lead receiver, 3 for 61 and a receiving touchdown. And then you had Allison Gonzalez Alvarado, who had 6 flagpoles, and then Breonna Carter had a pick, and here Sarfkin had 2 interceptions, and then Jayana Shannon with another interception as they take care of Lancaster Bible. Hartford would then play Villa Maria, and it would not go as well as they would lose 33-0. Breonna Taylor, 44 yards, 1 interception, 13 rushing yards, and then their lead receiver was Amaya Goodsell, 3 receptions, 18 yards, so obviously just not too much going on there on the offensive side of the ball, at least in this game. And then Breonna Carter, 6 flagpoles. I think it's Asa Kazik had an interception, but not enough as offensively just could not put together enough drives as they fall to Villa Maria, getting shut out 33-0. Then you had DuPage, I believe, the College of DuPage. They would go ahead and play Benedictine here, and they would beat Benedictine 20-12. Unfortunately, I don't think I have stats for DuPage from that one, so there you go, which is unfortunate there. Also, sorry, I think I skipped a game and a day here. The last game on Friday, Ventura beat Saddleback 48-18. Saddleback losing their second in a row. And then Ava Ortman, 7 passing touchdowns. And Elysia Brewer and Honest Watson with 2 touchdowns each there. And then that brings us to Saturday. DuPage would beat Benedictine. And then DuPage would also beat Illinois Wesleyan 13-0. Going back to the East Coast, Florida Gateway beats Point 33-0. North Central Missouri would play Graceland and lose lose to them, unfortunately, 29-6. And then back to the East Coast, Hartford Community College would play Iona. I believe that's a club team, and beat them 44-7. I think it's Kearney Nelson had 99 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Also 78 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns as your playmaker of the game. And then I see a Kazakh 3 for 55 and 2 receiving touchdowns. Their leader in flagpoles was a good sell, 9 flagpoles. Also 5 interceptions. I might actually will change my playmaker of the game pick here mid-segment. I did not see that for some reason. Goodsell is definitely your playmaker of the game with 5 interceptions there. Also, Nyla Dinkins and Kearney Nelson had an interception each as they took care of Iona 44-7. And then Hartford, I think, would play one more game, this time against Long Island, but they would lose to them in a close game. I believe it would be 12-19 as Long Island would go ahead and come away with the win there. Let's go ahead and look at the stats for that one. Nelson, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. Maya Goodsell, 3 for 58 and a receiving touchdown as their lead receiver. Defensively, Allison Gonzalez Alvarado, 10 flagpoles and a sack. Maya Goodsell had a long interception returned here, but just not enough as they would fall to Long Island, unfortunately, 19-12. Couple other games I want to make sure I mention here. Howard Community College would play Harrisburg Community College and would beat them twice, 13-0 and then 7-6. Wallace State Community College would then play Centenary out of Louisiana and beat them 78-0, and then they would play Millsaps and beat them 76-6. Last but not least, let's move on to Sunday the 12th here. Pratt Community College would beat Hendricks 33-6. North Central Missouri would beat Heston in a close one, 26-24. Lauren Hall, 74 passing yards and a touchdown, which led the team. Joy Humphreys, 66 yards and a passing touchdown, who was right behind her. Kennedy Johnson, lead rusher with 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 102 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns, as she is probably your playmaker of the game right there. Then you also have on defense, Cashel Gilbert, who had 4.5 flagpoles there. And an interception, as well as Amy Pickering, who had the other interception, and then Piper Martin got a sack in this one, as North Central Missouri just barely falls to Heston by 2. They will then play Midland, but I don't think Midland it doesn't look like they played everyone, at least just looking at the stats, but they would beat them 12-0 in this game. Kennedy Johnson, 40 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, also 73 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Megan Fitzpatrick, 3 for 27 and a receiving touchdown. And then defensively, they had 4 interceptions. Kennedy Johnson, Keishel Gilbert, Amy Pickering, and Jada Pierre-Louis each getting a pick each. So there you go. And it actually looks like maybe some of these stats were a little bit incomplete there. So I'm just going to leave it there for now. But at least according to this, it does say they beat Midland 12-0, or whatever team Midland was able to put out there. Last but not least, Howard Community College would go ahead and play Post here. The second game against Post was tough. Or let's talk about that Post game. They would lose that one by a pretty decent amount here. They would go ahead and lose 46-0. I think they only had 6 players, so already shorthanded. That is pretty tough there. And then I believe they would go ahead and play Roxbury with only 5 players. And I don't know if they were able to complete that game. So there you go, but they would end up playing both of those, and I assume would lose both of those. And then the last couple ones here, Pratt Community College would play Texas Wesleyan and fall to them 18-6. And then Bryan and Stratton would play Wisconsin Oshkosh and beat them 19-6 here. Gachang, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, also 24 rushing yards. Jessica Tran, 29 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Justice Guzman, 83 yards and a touchdown. Alexa Knuckles, 4 for 50 and a touchdown for them. And then defensively, Jessica Tran, 8 flagpoles. And then you had Samantha Meyer, Tiana Guzman, and Skylar Hawes with a sack each, and Gachang with an interception as they go ahead and beat University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. Your playmaker of the game, I think, is probably Nyonang Gachang here, who had 2 touchdowns and a interception as they go ahead and beat Wisconsin Oshkosh 19-6. Alrighty, now I got your D3 recap here, all the games from Monday, April 6th, to Sunday here, the 12th. Let's go ahead and get started, starting with Montclair State playing Keene. And Montclair goes ahead, and they take care of Keene pretty easily here, 26-0. For Montclair, Genevieve Farah, 5 of 8, 58 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Also had 53 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Their lead rusher was actually Emily Del Rosario with 58 rushing yards and a touchdown. You also had NAIA Underwood, I want to say, is that how you say that, with 26 rushing yards. Mayanico led with 40 receiving yards and a touchdown there, as she would score all those. And then defensively for Montclair State, they had a couple of big-time contributors. You have Gianna Marie Greenhow, I want to say, who had 5 flag pulls, which led the team. Also had 2 interceptions. Genevieve Farah also had an interception, and Serenity Muhammad also had an interception as well on defense. And then you had, I think it's Kadia Braxton, who had a sack, as well as Stephanie Ixcako, I want to say, who also had a sack. And I apologize if I'm saying any of those names wrong here. I would go ahead and say that the playmaker of the game, this was kind of tough here, but I think I got to absolutely go with Gianna Marie Greenhow here. 2 interceptions, and I believe also had a pick 6, if I'm not mistaken, and led with 5 flag pulls, as the defense definitely led the way for them. For Keene, Jezreel Miranda, 11 of 20, 144 yards, 4 interceptions though, which is tough. And then receiving wise, Sayla Leffler, 5 for 88, Erica Mercedes, 4 for 37. And then defensively for Keene, Dasani Nunez led with 7 flag pulls. Erica Mercedes, also had a sack and interception, as well as Brianna Medina, but not enough as they fall to Montclair State. Moving on here, D3 Rockford would go ahead and play JUCO Bryan and Stratton. They would fall to them 42-12. All their points being scored in the first half here, but obviously not enough for Rockford. Interesting, it looks like a little bit of a change at quarterback. Quintasia Mills, 13 of 32, 144 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 picks here. Also 122 rushing yards and a touchdown. It looks like, well, maybe not a change of quarterback. It looks like maybe Amari Camacho Anderson could also be hurt. That's a possibility as well. But Mills put up some numbers. Mercedes Morales was her lead receiver, 8 for 93 and a touchdown, followed by Maureen Shelton, 4 for 42, but obviously not enough offensively. Defensively, Gina Niels had 7 flag pulls. Maureen Shelton also had a pick. Kezia Jolakor, I want to say, had 3 sacks, as well as Malika Chambers with a sack, which is not enough to beat this Bryan and Stratton team, who threw all over them and just outscored them at the end of the day. Moving on to Tuesday here, we had Penn State Harrisburg. They would go ahead and beat Delaware's club team 19-9. No stats from that one. We would also have St. Joseph's Long Island beat Long Island University 33-13. And once again, no stats from that one. And then finally, we have State University of New York, Geneseo. They would beat Villa Maria 32-18 here. Geneseo with a big 19-point second half to go ahead and close that one. Let's go ahead and look at the stats here. Ella Koopman, 107 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Also 158 rushing yards, who is probably, I would say, Koopman's probably your playmaker of the game just based off of that. Natalie DePalma had 54 rushing yards and a touchdown. Also 4 receptions, 38 yards. And a receiving touchdown as their leading rusher and receiver. Then you also had Carmela Body and Karina Dunn with a touchdown each. Dunn did have 2 though, which is worth mentioning. And then for Geneseo, it was Emily McLeod who led with 8 flag pulls as they go ahead and take care of Villa Maria 32-18. Moving on to Wednesday, the 8th here, Benedictine would go ahead and play North Park and win a close one, 24-19. Their quarterback, I think it's Veronica Zelazak, freshman out of Benedictine, is their playmaker of the game. 144 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, but also 177 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, as she was the engine to this offense here. Leilani Gahn had 5 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown as the lead receiver for this O. Defensively, it was their player Bridgewater, Mina Bridgewater, who had 10 flagpoles here. Dakota Bowie had 2 sacks as well for this team as they go ahead and win a close one against North Park, 24-19. Looking at North Park, Jaslyn Greenfield, 135 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Also had 23 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. You had Ava Balmaceda, who led in rushing yards, 139 rushing yards and a touchdown there. Also had 2 receptions for 15 yards. Ashley Wilson had a receiving touchdown, and then Jayla Robinson was their lead receiver, 4 for 73, but not enough as they would fall to Benedictine. Defensively, Greenfield actually led with 7 flagpoles, followed by Jayla Robinson, who led with 2 picks, and Zoe Bates, who led in sacks with 1. But another tough, close loss for Greenfield and this North Park team. Moving on here, going back out east, we have Cedar Crest. They will go ahead and beat Cairn 7-6 in a close one. No stats from that one. Hollins will then go ahead and play Lees-McRae and lose kind of big, 68-0. Faith Falter, 58 passing yards and 35 rushing yards, but 7 interceptions. Lead receiver was Dakota Webb Hawkins with 33 yards, and then their lead flagpoler, it was tied between Faith Falter and Brianna Maya Calix, I want to say, who also had 2 sacks, but just not enough going for them on offense as they fall to Lees-McRae. And then last game from Wednesday the 8th here, we went ahead and have Long Island play Keene, and they would beat them in another close game here, 7-0. Yeah, you read that right. Not too much going on there, but a win is a win. Now let's go ahead and move on to Thursday the 9th. Let's actually start on the East Coast. Again, Eastern would play Montclair State and lose to them 7-6 here. Eastern would score 6 in the fourth quarter, but would not be able to get the PAT to convert there as Montclair State holds on here. Looking at the stats, Adia Bell, 75 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick here. Also had 7 rushing yards. Emily Del Rosario led with 33 rushing yards. Genevieve Farah had 25 rushing yards right behind her. And then Maya Onico with 47 receiving yards as their leader. And then Serena Muhammad caught a 25-yard touchdown as their receiving touchdown leader. Defensively, again, dominated for Montclair State. Bree Carter, 7 flagpoles, 2 sacks, who I would go ahead and say is your playmaker of the game as she was just everywhere. You also have Serenity Muhammad with an interception as well as they get kind of a big win over fellow D3 Eastern. For Eastern here, Kerry Green really struggled. 9 of 21, 62 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick here. Really nothing going on the ground. And then through the air, Drya Johnson was the only player who caught more than 1 reception. 6 for 32 here. And then everyone else, Ariana Ridgway, Molly Shellpepper, who, by the way, Shellpepper caught a touchdown, and Damien Boyer only had 1 reception each, which is tough. Defensively, Kyla Massenberg led with 9 flagpoles and 2 sacks. Drya Johnson had an interception. But that is pretty much it as Montclair State, in a close one, would go ahead and win 7-6. Now going back out to the Midwest here, we have Marion playing Rockford, and Marion will take care of Rockford pretty easily, 27-0. Starting with Marion, Holly Goodwin had herself a day as playmaker of the game. 184 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, also 37 rushing yards. Daniela Chadame also had 24 passing yards there as well and 20 rushing yards. Receiving-wise, Kendall Graves had 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Emily Eastham, 67 yards and a touchdown. Daniela Shanaim, 38 yards and a touchdown. And then Reagan Montello, 3 for 30 there as well. Defensively, Emily Eastham had 6 flagpoles, and then Kendall Graves as well as Daniela Chadame had an interception each. For Rockford, still Quintasia Mills at quarterback, 76 yards, 2 interceptions, and 38 rushing yards. Not a lot of production there. You had Takia Gray with 9 for 62, but she was the only one who caught more than 1 reception here for Rockford. Defensively, Gina Niels had 9 flagpoles, but no sacks, no interceptions as Marion gets a nice 27-0 win over Rockford. Moving on, Marion would then go ahead and play University of Wisconsin Oshkosh here, and they would win once more 27-14. Fun fact here, it was 14-7, Wisconsin leading at half, and then Marion with an unanswered 20-point fourth quarter, really 20-point second half, would go ahead and put them away here. So shout out Marion once more. Holly Goodwin, 126 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Shauna May had 40 passing yards and a pick thrown as well, but she also had 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Goodwin adding on 37 yards and a rushing touchdown. Lead receiver was Kendall Graves, 98 yards and a receiving touchdown for them. Defensively for Marion, Reagan Montello, 8 flagpoles and an interception. Kendall Graves, an interception, and Holly Goodwin with an interception. Once again, I would probably say Holly Goodwin is your playmaker of the game. And then for Wisconsin, Oshkosh here, Marion Bell, 183 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, which was tough. Jemiah Mariner was their lead receiver with 6 for 58 and a touchdown. And then Jolie, I think it's Sheffelout, I want to say, had 4 receptions for 38 yards and a touchdown. And then their lead flag puller was Paige Vitek with 15 flag pulls and an interception. Jolie Sheffelout also had an interception, but not enough as they fall to Marion due to a tough second half, 27-14. But Wisconsin Oshkosh would go ahead and get a dub here against Rockford in a close one, 19-15. Rockford scoring 13 in the fourth quarter to really make this one a game. But Wisconsin Oshkosh went ahead and held on here. Marion Bell, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick here, 4 rushing yards. Jolie Sheffelout, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sophia Lee, 4 for 43. Kayana Williams had a receiving touchdown as well. And then Paige Vitek once again led with 9 flagpoles. I think it's Aliana Rotter had a sack, and then Sheffelout here with an interception. I think Jolie Sheffelout was your playmaker of the game, just doing it all. 2 receiving touchdowns and a pick in this one. For Rockford, Quintasia Mills, 81 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Also 88 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as your lead passer and rusher. Gina Neals was your lead receiver, 3 for 24 and a touchdown there. And then it was Tay Simpson who had 7 flagpoles, 2 sacks here, and Emily Lind had an interception, but not enough to go ahead and beat Wisconsin Oshkosh. All right, now moving on, I believe we have a couple games here that came from a tournament that happened on the East Coast here. First, we have Lancaster Bible College playing Hartford Community College, where Hartford would go ahead and win 24-0 for Lancaster. For some reason, it does not list the names, just numbers, but number 3 for them, 72 passing yards. That's their lead passer. And then number 9 was their lead receiver with 86, as well as their lead puller in flags with 7. As they fall 24-0. Moving on, they would also play Lancaster Bible would play Iona, and they would lose to them 26-6. And then Redlands, in their last game of the season back in California, would play Norco Community College and lose to them 32-18. Back to the East Coast, St. Joseph's in Brooklyn loses to D1 Mercyhurst 13-0. Then you have Geneseo beating Russell Sage by a whole lot here, 48-0, 28-0 at halftime for Geneseo. Ella Koopman, 228 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 105 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. You also had Natalia De Palma with 58 rushing yards, Megan Howard with 17 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, and then you had Karina Dunn with 3 receiving touchdowns, 79 receiving yards, and Kenna McKenzie with 39 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Defensively for Geneseo, Emily McLeod had 8 flagpoles and a long interception returned, as well as Olivia Horton with another interception. For Russell Sage, Bianca Ricudo was pretty productive passing yards wise, 234 passing yards, but did throw 2 picks. She also had 35 rushing yards. Their lead receiver was Haley Blake with 10 receptions for 119 yards. And then Kaylee Dean was their lead flag puller and sack leader with 8 flag pulls and 1 sack there, as Geneseo goes ahead and takes care of Russell Sage. And then our last games here from Friday, we only have 2. Wagner would beat Centenary 39-0, and then Rutgers' club team would go ahead and beat State University of New York Cortland 19-0. All right, now moving on to the weekend, Saturday the 11th. We have a whole bunch of games. Let's go ahead and start in Illinois here. Aurora beats Illinois College 52-13 here. Illinois College scoring those 13 in the fourth quarter. For Aurora, Kalen Morgan, what a game. 333 yards, 8 passing touchdowns here. That's obviously your playmaker of the game, and 37 rushing yards. Claire Strong had 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. Emily, I think it's Gabrocek, had 151-yard touchdown. Jemiah Anderson had 1 touchdown. Jenna Grice had 2 touchdowns. Jennifer Lynn had a touchdown. And then Philindrinos had a touchdown as well. Defensively, Emily Gabrocek, Gabrocek had 5 flagpoles and an interception. Tiandra Henry had a sack, and then Claire Strong had an interception there. For Illinois College, Reagan Oster was the lead passer with 78 yards and a pick. Ella Osmus had 51 passing yards, interesting enough, on 15 attempts and 28 yards and a rushing touchdown, as it looked like they split time with her. Abby Flowers, 6 receptions, 63 yards, but really not much going on for them on offense other than that. And then, as far as flagpoles go, Ella Smith and Abby Keaton co-led with 5 flagpoles each, as Aurora gets another win over an Illinois team here, 52-13. Aurora would then go ahead and play Benedictine, and they would take care of them as well, 52-6. Kaylin Morgan with another decent game, 12 of 17, 156 yards and a touchdown. Also 3 rushing touchdowns, as once again, she is your playmaker of the game. You also had Jenna Grice throw 14 times for 154 yards and 3 touchdowns and 27 yards. Claire Strong, once again, a lead receiver, 6 for 83 and 2 touchdowns. Tiandra Henry here had 3 receptions for 73 yards, Jenna Grice 4 for 43, and then Melina Kane, as well as Emily Gabrocek, had a receiving touchdown each. Defensively, Rachel Wicke led with 6 flagpoles. It looks like Jemiah Anderson had a sack, as well as Jada Morgan with an interception. For Benedictine, the struggles continue here. Zilla Zach, their quarterback, 110 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and 69 rushing yards. Leilani Gahn had 72 receiving yards and a touchdown here on 2 receptions. And then Stevens had the most receptions with 5 for 20. Defensively, it was Leilani Gahn and Stevens who co-led in flagpoles with 6 each, but not enough as Aurora continues their dominance. And then Benedictine would go ahead and play DuPage, I believe. I want to say that is the junior college. And they would lose to them, unfortunately. They would lose to them 20-12. Here are some of the stats. Weronkia Lenzak had 110 passing yards, 69 rushing yards. Leilani Gahn, 2 catches, 71 yards and a touchdown, also 6 pulls. Madison Stevens also had 5 catches and 6 pulls as well. Or sorry, that was versus Aurora. Versus College of DuPage, Zilla Zach had 150 passing yards, 57 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Stevens had 7 catches. Gahn had 7 flagpoles and 5 catches for 72 yards. As Benedictine kind of drops a tough one here by a score to College of DuPage, 20-12. Going back to the East Coast here, Gallaudet in United East play continues their dominance as they go ahead and beat Cedar Crest a whopping 34-6 here. For Gallaudet, Gianna Visco, 20-28, 204 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks there, but Visco also had 71 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as their leading rusher and passer. Receiving-wise, Jada Zaremka had 6 receptions for 74 yards and a touchdown. Citrine Loomer had 5 for 56 and a touchdown. Tiana Stariev had 3 for 35 and a touchdown. And then Tamara Tenevosian, I want to say, also had a receiving touchdown as well, as they spread it out pretty well. But shout out Gianna Visco, who I believe is your playmaker of this game. On defense for them, Sophia Giansanti, excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, had 7 flagpoles. And then you had Zaremka with an interception, as well as Visco catching an interception on defense as well. For Cedar Crest, their lead passer was Maya Clemens, who had 83 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. Their lead receiver was Ginger Kurdock with 5 for 87 and a touchdown. And then defensively, it was Elia Tony and Gigi Martin, who co-led with 7 flagpoles. It also looks like Ginger Kurdock had 2 interceptions, but not enough, as Gallaudet stays undefeated, 34-6, with a 34-6 win over Cedar Crest. Cedar Crest would also play Penn State Harrisburg, where Penn State Harrisburg would go ahead and get a big 35-7 win. NAIA King, 162 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick as the leading passer. Also had 44 rushing yards and a touchdown for them there, as she was your playmaker of the game. Bradshaw was their lead rusher with 52 yards, and then you had Carpenter with a rushing touchdown. Mila Guest was their lead receiver, 6 receptions, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and Megan Cruz with a receiving touchdown as well. And then defensively, Bianca Williams led the team with 7 flagpoles, but you also had sacks from Bryant Frank and Mila Guest here, who each had 1 in this big win. For Cedar Crest, Lamaya Clements was the lead passer again, 97 yards and a touchdown. And then their lead receiver was Annalise Rios, who had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown, but just not enough going there on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, it was Kenny Atkinson Hinwa, I want to say, who, as well as Zane Pollard and Haley Wolbeck, who had 3 flagpoles each. And then it looks like Kurdock had an interception, but Penn State Harrisburg goes ahead and gets another win, 35-7 over Cedar Crest. Going back over to the Midwest here, we have Illinois Wesleyan playing the College of DuPage here, and unfortunately for them, they would drop that one 13-0. I don't think there are any official stats kept for that one, but unfortunately, just a tough loss for them. Huntingdon would then play Milligan in a classic, but I made sure to recap that before this segment, so make sure, not before the segment, I think after the segment, but that will be a separate one, so make sure you check that one out. Moving on to the other games that happened, Rockford would play Illinois Wesleyan. I think this was actually Illinois Wesleyan's first game here, and Malin Nunez was their lead passer, 206 yards and 4 touchdowns and a pick, as well as 23 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in this 33-7 win over Rockford here. Deanna Sarabia had 90 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Lil Greenfield had 57 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns for them in this win. Nunez, obviously your playmaker of the game. Does not look like there was an Emma Caniglia for this game, so that's tough for that. And then you had Nakila Mason with 11 flagpoles, Leah Glover with 2 interceptions, Nat Stallings with an interception, and Zoe Vasquez with an interception each, as they were very active. For Rockford, it looks like this was the return of Amaya Camacho Anderson, who had 109 yards, a touchdown, and 4 picks, unfortunately, in this one. Receiving-wise, Aldi Ream led with 4 for 43. Tay Simpson, 128-yard touchdown there, but not too much going on for Rockford. Gina Niels had 8 flagpoles. He also had a sack from Takia Gray, as well as Joe LaCour here to have 2 sacks total, and then Morales had an interception, but not enough, as Illinois Wesleyan wins big 33-7. Going back to the East Coast here, some Atlantic East play. You have Eastern playing Immaculata, and Eastern goes ahead and jumps out to a quick 13-0 lead at half, and they would maintain that, as that would be the final 13-0. Kira Green, 167 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, also 45 rushing yards and a touchdown. Dry Johnson, 10 receptions, 103 yards, and a receiving touchdown there. Kyla Massenberg on defense, 9 flagpoles and 2 sacks, which led the team. Sanaya Tyler had a sack as well, and then Stephanie White had an interception to go with that. Playmaker of the game, I think, probably has to be Kira Green for those 2 touchdowns that she had in part in scoring. For Immaculata, though, Devin Cosgrove, 107 yards, 1 interception, also 28 rushing yards as their leading passer and rusher. And then receiving-wise, Eliana Zatskowski had 8 receptions for 68 yards. And then you only had Taylor Egan and Jacqueline Molini who recorded receptions after that. So tough go for them. Defensively, Frankie Brunkel and Teresa Japa led with 6 flagpoles each. Tara Lawler had a sack. Jacqueline Molini had an interception, but not enough, as offensively they just could not get going at all. Staying on the East Coast here, shifting to United East play, Karen would go ahead and play Keystone, and they would beat Keystone 31-6 here. Desiree Bright with another great game, 209 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception there. Clara Tylofsky, I want to say, had 5 receptions, 46 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Katie Moreau, 10 for 69. Abigail Strange, 2 for 45 and 2 touchdowns. And then Olivia Logan, 3 for 9. As offensively, they did not have a problem scoring. Defensively, for Cairn here, MLO led with 10 flagpoles. Meg Gleason had 2 sacks, and then Kayla Adams had an interception. For Keystone, and by the way, playmaker of that game is probably Desiree Bright here, who had a great game. Anyways, for Keystone, Desiree Stamps, 107 passing yards and a pick. Also your lead rusher with 17 rushing yards. Receiving-wise, Jada Price was the lead receiver, 6 for 43, and Haley Mowry, 3 for 30. And then defensively, Melina Alexander led with 6 flagpoles and a sack. Jada Price had an interception, and Tiana Bibbins had an interception as well, as Karen takes down Keystone in United East play 31-6. We then have a couple games without box scores here. Huntingdon would go ahead and beat LaGrange 25-7 for their last game of the regular season. LaGrange would lose to Milligan 52-0, and Lancaster Bible would lose to Rutgers' club team 20-0. Now moving on here, Mount St. Mary's would lose to Montclair State by a whole bunch. Montclair State winning 59-6 here. Hadia Bell, 118 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 15 rushing yards, but on the ground was where most of the damage was done here. Lily Agbada, 95 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Emily Del Rosario, 53 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Nalia Underwood, 41 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Genevieve Farah, a rushing touchdown, and Sofia Del Grosso with a rushing touchdown. Receiving-wise, Gina Marie Greenhall had 51-yard receiving touchdown, and Serenity Mohammed had a 2 receptions, for 50 yards and a touchdown for them. Defensively for Montclair State, Bree Carter, 3 sacks and 7 flagpoles, which led the team. Maya Nico had 2 sacks as well. You also had interceptions from Gianna Marie Greenhall here with an interception. And then Angelina Varelli with an interception as well, as this defense and really this team was popping off on both sides of the ball. Playmaker of this game, I think I'm going to pick somebody on defense and pick Bree Carter, who had 3 sacks and 7 flagpoles, which really disrupted this Mount St. Mary's team, who struggled. Alyssa Sarlo for them had 134 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks here. They weren't really able to run the ball at all. And then receiving-wise, Sabrina, I think it's Searcy, had 5 receptions, 46 yards. Malcolm had 2 for 37, and Kayla Nicholas had 1 22-yard touchdown, but that is pretty much it. Defensively for them, Italia Malika had 7 flagpoles, but that would not be enough, as Montclair State would win big 59-6 to go ahead and improve to 5-1, I believe, either 5-1 or 6-1, but only 1 loss on the season, while Mount St. Mary's is the exact opposite. Going back to Atlantic East play here, we have Centenary facing off with Newman, and this was a close one. Centenary would just barely edge out Newman 13-12. A touchdown and PAT in the 4th would go ahead and give them the win and this game here. Let's go ahead and look at Centenary. Kezia Feaster, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, also 64 rushing yards. You also have Hunter Haskell here at 8 receptions for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. Right behind her, though, was Mackenzie Almestica, 3 for 44, and Sophia Mendez, who had 4 for 43. Defensively, Almestica had 7 flagpoles and a sack. Cayman Fulcher had a sack, and then Amani Blucher had an interception for them. Kezia Feaster is your playmaker of the game for Centenary. Threw those 2 touchdowns, but also had that rush attempt that would put them up by the one that they needed. For the other team here in Newman, Kayla Maish had 134 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Also 46 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Obviously, that was not enough. Receiving-wise, Shannon Duffy was their lead receiver, 6 for 69. And then defensively, Yanacia Thomas had 8 flagpoles and 2 picks, but not enough as they go ahead and fall by 1 to Centenary. Then you have Marymount. They would play Newman, and this one wasn't close at all. Marymount continuing to dominate here late in the season. They beat Newman 60-0. Karen Volmer back in mid-season form, 134 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. You also had Jasenia Velez, 69 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Also had a passing touchdown as well. Volmer also with 19 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Velez, 4 receptions, 79 yards, and a receiving touchdown, as she is obviously your playmaker of the game with a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown. You have Alexandria Veltri, who had 4 for 64 and 3 touchdowns, and Morgan Lester, who had 2 for 17 and a touchdown. Defensively, Samaya Barnes led with, or co-led with 4 flag pulls with Victoria Johnson. Johnson having 4 pulls as well as 2.5 sacks. Barnes with an interception, and then Naima Thomas with an interception as well, as Marymount just wins big. For Newman, Ava Valente, 59 yards, 2 picks. Interesting enough, it didn't seem like Valente played in that last game, so there is that. Their lead rusher was Tasia Gaskins with 20 yards. Shannon Duffy was their lead receiver with 3 receptions for 26. And then Kayla Maish as well as Marie Berry co-led with flag pulls of 3 each, but not nearly enough as Marymount continues to dominate here, winning 60-0. Moving on to the United East, still on the East Coast, Gallaudet will play Penn State Harrisburg in a much-anticipated rematch, and Gallaudet would go ahead and win big again. They're up 19-13 in the first half, or at half, and then would go ahead and outscore Penn State Harrisburg 19-6 in the second half as they go ahead and are pretty much in control, if not. I mean, I think it's maybe a little bit too early, but they probably will be the United East Conference champions. Gianna Visco with another sensational game, 293 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. Visco with 35 rushing yards as your playmaker of the game. Alona Zafty had a rushing touchdown as well. Receiving-wise, Jada Zaremka, 9 reception, 96 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns as she led receivers here. You also have Tiana Steriev, who had 4 receptions for 87 yards, and then Satrine Loomer, who had 8 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown. And then Tamara Tedevosian, who had 2 receiving touchdowns for Gallaudet too. Defensively, Tedevosian had 9 flag pulls, which led the team, and Loomer had an interception, which led the team as well. For Penn State Harrisburg, offensively, I feel like not even that bad here. Nadia King, 281 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 18 rushing yards. Receiving-wise, Bryant Frank led with 3 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. Mila Guest, 7 for 68. Megan Cruz, 7 for 53 and a touchdown. And Janae Thompson, 2 for 25 and a touchdown. Defensively, though, definitely struggled. Bianca Williams, 9 flag pulls. Brian Frank had a single sack, and Nadia King had an interception. But at the end of the day, just not enough from the defense here. Offensively, they played a pretty clean game. Probably could have scored more here and finished more drives. But defensively, just kind of not holding up their end over there. As Gallaudet goes ahead, and I believe they sweep Penn State Harrisburg in the regular season with this 38-19 win. Going back to the Midwest just briefly here, Illinois College plays Rockford, and they would beat them 12-0. For Illinois College, Reagan Oster, 122 yards, 1 touchdown for them. Also a rushing touchdown. Ella Osmus not really getting as many attempts here as she did earlier on in the season. Abby Flowers was the lead rusher with 26 rushing yards. Also a receiver with 7 for 40. Ella Osmus, 6 receptions, 30 yards, and a receiving touchdown, though. Then defensively, Ella Smith with 6 flag pulls and a pick, as well as Abby Keenan with another interception for Illinois College. For Rockford, a closer loss, but still a loss. Camacho Anderson, 113 yards, 2 picks. Quintasia Mills, 35 rushing yards. Emily Lynn, 4 for 49 receiving yards. And then Gianna Niels led with 8 flag pulls. Oh, and Joe LaCour with a single sack, but no interceptions as Rockford drops a tough one, 12-0 to Illinois College. Now back to the East Coast here. Holy Family would play Chestnut Hill, and they would beat them pretty well here, 34-0. Alice Davis, 98 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, also 63 rushing yards. Kieran Cusick had 23 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Alexis Tina McLeod had 141-yard receiving touchdown. Delaney Minich had 2 for 22 and a touchdown, and Kylie Cooley 2 for 17 and a touchdown. Defensively, Morgan Sims Another great game. 6 flagpoles, which co-led with Alanis Clavel Lopez, who also had 6. Sims did have 2 interceptions. Tina McLeod had an interception. Savia Campbell had an interception as well. And then Samira Anderson had a sack to go with all that, as defensively, Holy Family really held it down. And I'd probably have to give Playmaker of the game to Morgan Sims. For Chestnut Hill, just not much going on for them. Raquel Dandy, 31 passing yards. Elizabeth Lumpkin, 19 rushing or receiving yards. Sorry, Dandy had 31 rushing yards and then 45 passing yards and 3 interceptions. So there you go there. Just not much going on offense for them. And then defensively, Dandy with 7 flagpoles and 2 picks, as Holy Family takes care of them 34-0. You then have, it looks like here, Geneseo playing Hartwick, and they would go ahead and beat them 41-19 here. For Geneseo, Ella Koopman, a great game, 216 yards, 4 touchdowns, 141 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown, as she is your playmaker of the game. You also had Natalia De Palma with 73 rushing yards and Megan Howard with a rushing touchdown. Receiving-wise, De Palma had 3 receptions, which all went for touchdowns, by the way, and 76 receiving yards. You had Karina Dunn with 7 for 72 and a single receiving touchdown, as well as Abigail Ulrich with 4 for 30 here on offense. Defensively, Emily McLeod led with 11 flagpoles and an interception. You also had Caitlin Shute with a sack as well for Geneseo. For Hartwick here, Audra Dahl led with 111 passing yards and an interception. Did have 119 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns there, followed by Heaven Levere with 54 yards and Anna Stanovich with 34 rushing yards. Their lead receiver was Bailey McCoy with 6 receptions for 60 yards. And then defensively, Ellie Kalbach had 15 flagpoles here. Reese Malfitoni had 2 sacks, but not enough, as Geneseo goes ahead and beats Hartwick 41-19. And then last but not least here, I want to say one of the last games from from Saturday. We have Marymount playing Centenary, and Marymount takes care of them 62-6 here. For Marymount, it was Dakota Bright Brubaker who led with 93 passing yards and a touchdown, followed by Kara Volmer with 63 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. She also had 43 rushing yards and a touchdown. Bright Brubaker adding on another 31 rushing yards. Jasenia Velez with a rushing touchdown. Same with Isabella Silvestri and Samaya Barnes and Kayla Barr, each scoring on the ground. Zakaria Sterling had 2 receptions for 69 yards and a receiving touchdown. Kayla Barr, 2 for 46 and a touchdown. Jasenia Velez, 2 for 22 and a touchdown for this Marymount offense. And then defensively, Samaya Barnes, 11 flagpoles and interception, followed by Barr, who had a pick. Dakota Bright Brubaker had 2 picks, and Morgan Lester had a pick. I think your playmaker of the game has to be Dakota Bright Brubaker, who had a passing touchdown, who had 31 rushing yards, and then also had those 2 interceptions on defense. For Centenary, Kezia Feaster, 170 yards, 1 touchdown, but 5 interceptions. She was also the leading rusher with 21 yards. And then you had Nevaeh O'Keefe, who was their lead receiver with 5 for 45 receiving yards. O'Keefe also their lead flag puller with 5 pulls, as Marymount dominates Centenary 62-6. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to our last day of games, Sunday the 12th here. Penn State Schuylkill plays Chestnut Hill College, and they will go ahead and beat them 28-18 here. A.B. Brown, 268 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also 10 rushing yards to go with that here. She is probably your playmaker of the game. Lead rusher was Michaela Johnson with 16 rushing yards. Also, your lead receiver with 73 receiving yards. Kaylee Morgan brought in 2 touchdowns, as well as had 67 yards. Kenzie Stoller with a touchdown. Miranda Morstadt with a touchdown as well. And then defensively, Morstadt and Michaela Hill each had an interception, but the lead flag puller was Sierra Wisniewski with 6 flagpoles and a sack. For Chestnut Hill, Raquel Dandy led in passing yards, 145 for 3 touchdowns and a pick. Also 47 rushing yards. Pretty productive here, but just not quite enough. And then receiving-wise, Caroline Croteau, 5 receptions, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bree Hicks, 2 for 35 and a touchdown for them as well. Raquel Dandy had an interception on defense, and then Caroline Croteau led with 5 flagpoles. Urini Monero had their single sack, which is not quite enough enough here, as Chestnut Hill did score 18, all 18 of those points in the second half, but was outscored 21-0 in the first half there. So Penn State Schuylkill goes ahead and gets this 28-18 win over them. Penn State Schuylkill would then play Holy Family, and Holy Family would go ahead and blank them 26-0. Alice Davis, 49 passing yards and a touchdown, but most of the damage was done on the ground, which is why she's the playmaker of the game. 208 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Cusick with 57 rushing yards. Alanis Clavel Lopez with 43 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And then Kylie Cooley, only 1 reception for 49 yards and a touchdown. Defensively, Alexis Tina McLeod had an interception for them, and then Morgan Sims led with 6 flagpoles. Alanis Clavel Lopez had 4 sacks, and McLeod, like I said, had a sack as well. For Penn State Schuylkill, just the opposite of the game they had earlier. Brown had 120 passing yards and a pick. Kaylee Morgan, 21 rushing yards. Sierra Wisniewski, 47 receiving yards. And Miranda Morstadt, 38 receiving yards there. Defensively for Penn State Schuylkill, Michaela Hill, 6 flagpoles, and she led the team there, but not enough, as offensively they just got shut down here. Holy Family winning 26-0. Marymount will then go play a Sacred Hearts Club team, and they will beat them pretty easily, 58-0. Kara Volmer, 96 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Velez threw a 35-yard touchdown, it looks like. Dakota Bright Brubaker, 79 rushing yards and a touchdown. Jusenia Velez, 53 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Kara Volmer, 49 yards and a rushing touchdown. And Kayla Barr with a rushing touchdown. Samaya Barnes with 46 yards and a touchdown. Kayla Barr, 2 receiving touchdowns. And then you also had Jusenia Velez with 3 receptions for 45 yards. Defensively, Morgan Lester led with 6 flagpoles, but you also had interceptions from I think it's Zakira Sterling with 1, and then Samaya Barnes with 2, and Jayla Thompson with yet another 1 there. Playmaker of the game is Jasenia Velez, who put up some nice numbers in this one, but you can also look at this defense and give them a whole bunch of credit as well. All right, now moving on, Marymount would also play Mount St. Mary's, and this was a little bit of a closer game at halftime. It was a 14-12 game, but a Marymount 13-point fourth quarter would allow them to go ahead and get some separation as they win 27-18. For Marymount, Kara Volmer, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Jusenia Velez, 144-yard passing touchdown. She also had 36 rushing yards. Kayla Barr with a rushing touchdown, Volmer with a rushing touchdown, and then receiving-wise, Velez just going on a tear. 8 receptions, 153 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Kayla Barr, 5 for 97, and a receiving touchdown. And then defensively, Leslie of Vegas led with 11 flagpoles, and then you also had Kayla Barr with 2 interceptions here. Kayla Barr kind of having a great game here, and I think I'm going to go with her as your playmaker of the game. 2 interceptions, which was big time in stopping that Mount St. Mary's defense, as well as a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and 5 receptions for 97 yards. For Mount St. Mary's, Annabelle Hott, 157 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, also 52 rushing yards. Lead receiver was Jayana Goins with 42 receiving yards and a touchdown. You also had Jordan Dodson-Jensen and Alyssa Lane with a receiving touchdown each. And then defensively, Morgan Gregory co-led with Kiera Speaks with 9 flagpoles each, and Alyssa Lane had that 1 interception. But Marymount beats the Mount here 27-18. Going over to Illinois here, Aurora would take care of North Park 38-12 here. Kaylin Morgan, another great game, 242 yards, 4 touchdowns, also 59 rushing yards as your playmaker of the game. Jemiah Anderson with a rushing touchdown. You also had Claire Strong, 8 receptions, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns as your lead receiver. Jenna Grice, 5 for 40 and a touchdown, and then Melina Kane with a receiving touchdown there. And then defensively, Claire Strong had 4 flagpoles. Jemiah Anderson with a sack. Tiandra Henry, with a sack, and then Emily Galpacek with 2 interceptions in this one. For North Park, Janiyah Greenfield started, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks here. Ava Balmaceda led with 24 rushing yards, and also led in receiving yards with 86 and 2 receiving touchdowns. And then defensively, you had Amber Brock as well as Ashley Wilson co-leading in flagpoles with 8 each. Zoe Bates with the sack, as Aurora takes care of North Park 38-12. And then last but definitely not least here, Bryan and Stratton would play University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and they would beat them 19-6. Not necessarily the closest game. Bryan and Stratton would score 13 in the fourth, though, to go ahead and pull away. For Wisconsin-Oshkosh, Marin Bell, 129 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Keanu Williams, 13 rushing yards. Also lead receiver with 52 yards and a touchdown. Just not much going on defense or offense for them. And then defensively, Paige Vitek led again with 9 flagpoles. He also had interceptions from Keanu Williams and Jolie Sheffel out here, each getting 1. And then Aliana Rotter had 2 sacks, but just not enough as they go ahead and fall to Bryan and Stratton College. All right, now I am here to talk about Huntingdon versus Milligan, D3 versus NAIA here. They actually met earlier on in the season where Huntingdon kind of pushed Milligan, but they still lost 39-19. That will kind of be their closest game until Milligan would end up playing Lees-McRae and beat them by a single point here. And so this was going to be a good one. Huntingdon had some decent games as well throughout this season, as this is one of their last games here. I think second to last game. They would play their last game later that day here. And, you know, they played Campbellsville really close, up to 2 points there. Like I said, Milligan, they played them the closest out of anybody pretty much. Well, at least until they played Lees-McRae. So there's that as well. They played Cumberland, Point, King. You know, they beat all those teams. So, you know, this is definitely a decent squad here and definitely an interesting game. And so let's go ahead and hop right into it. First quarter, Milligan starts with the football here. Bridget Keiser in at quarterback. After a incompletion on second down, Keiser rolls left, throws a curl to Caitlin Quinn. That gives them a first and some as well. 1st and 9 as they approach midfield. Following that, Keiser finds her center, Sam Urso, for a gain of 4. She then finds Jaleese Padilla, I believe, for another nice gain here, who goes ahead and spins and gets them a first down past midfield as Bridget Keiser and Milligan is rolling. Let's go ahead and fast forward a couple plays here. 3rd and 7 past midfield. Bridget Keiser finds Parker Bridges on the slant. Let's go ahead and get them in the red zone, their first red zone trip of the day, to make it 1st and 17. Following a quick hitch to Caitlin Quinn to make it 2nd and 9, Keiser rolls left on second down and finds Ashton Weirley, who toe taps this one in to make it 6-0 real quick, just like that. On the PAT, Keiser finds Sam Urso on the drag route to make it 7-0 as Milligan strikes first. Here we go. 6:41 left for Huntingdon here in the first quarter. Kennedy Young in at quarterback goes ahead on the first play. Launches one deep to the post to her center, Jocelyn Jones, and she brings it in to go ahead and jumpstart this Huntingdon drive and give them a 1st and 15 past midfield, basically flipping the field just like that. Young, out of the empty formation, goes ahead and throws quickly to the flats here on the next play to Kyla Rome, who goes ahead and gets a nice gain of 13. She then goes ahead and throws a quick hitch back to Rome to give them their first red zone look of the day in just a couple plays here, 1st and 17. First down at 17 in the red zone here, looking to score. Young checks it down, but this one is dropped. Second down here, Young almost throws an interception. Just kind of a bad decision throwing under pressure here over the middle as well, but luckily this one is just deflected. On 3rd down here, it's another incompletion, so now that brings up 4th down, 4th and 17 in the red zone here. Young throws it down the left sideline, but this one is overthrown, also just well covered in one-on-one, so that's a turnover on downs. Milligan goes ahead and takes over with about 2:52 left in the first quarter and counting. After 2 drops on this drive, Keiser finds Ashton Weirley on the curl to make it 1st and 15 approaching midfield. She then scrambles right to make it 2nd and 7, and then again left to make it 3rd and 2, and that's where we pick up here at the top of the second quarter. Milligan with the 3rd and 2 approaching near midfield here. Here's what happens. Keiser finds Krista Quinn, I believe for the first time today, to make it 1st and 18 past midfield as Milligan is rolling. They then go ahead and hand it off to their running back. Couldn't quite see the number here, but she goes ahead and gets maybe a yard here. On the following play, Keiser then throws the drag route to Lily Rumrow, who makes the first defender miss, and then goes ahead and goes forward for a nice gain of about 9 or so. So now it's 3rd and 8 here. On 3rd down and 8, Keiser with the snap hits the deep out right here. Couldn't see the receiver, but she brings it in to make a nice catch, making it 1st and 17 in the red zone. Second red zone trip today for Milligan on first down. Keiser goes ahead and scrambles for a couple to just make it 2nd and 15. She then throws the curl route to set up a 3rd and 3, just 3 yards away here. And then on third down, Keiser actually lines up as a receiver, gets the handoff on a jet sweep, and then finds Sam Urso, I believe, to go ahead and make it 13-0. PAT would be no good, but Milligan does have the 2-score lead here early in the second. Well, really about halfway through the second with about 7 minutes left. Huntingdon looking to get something going here. They go ahead and direct snap this one to NAIA Carter, who takes off left for a very long run here, making it 1st and 20 across midfield. Following that, they go ahead and run a double pass here. Carter with the snap throws it to Young, but she gets taken down by Jasmine McDowell, who just makes a great read here and pulls her flag immediately for kind of a big loss. It's 2nd and 30 now. Following an incompletion, it's 3rd down. They call a timeout, but after the timeout, Young, under center this time, goes ahead and puts this throw on the line to her post route. I think it's Aaliyah Richard, and she brings it in for a big gain, but it's still 4th and 15 here. 15 yards to go before they are in the red zone. Obviously, Huntingdon is going to go for it. So here's what happens. Young with the snap goes ahead and avoids the rush, steps up and launches one deep, just a Hail Mary, just to get something here. And it's Shalabar St. Juice who adjusts the ball and brings it in. Just almost scoring here, but pulled just short here. It's about 1st and 1 in the red zone. Decent throw by Young to just give her receiver a chance, and a great play by St. Juice to adjust to the ball here and put them in the red zone. 1st and 1. In the red zone, they go ahead and call Kennedy Young up the middle, but she is stopped short, so 2nd and inches. 2nd down here, Young throws it quickly over the middle, but it's knocked away, so that now brings up 3rd down and inches. On 3rd down, Kennedy Young looks to scramble here, and at the last second, pitches it forward to Amani Bentley, and she brings it in to make it 13-6 as Huntingdon goes ahead and responds here. But Young takes a little bit of a hit here. Like I said, she was scrambling, and then she pitches it at the very last second, so there's a lot of contact, and so she ends up going down and would be out of the game for quite a bit here, as NAIA Carter would go ahead and get up in there under center as their quarterback, and on the PAT it'd be no good, but they do get a score here to make it a 7-point game. Now Milligan, they would get the ball with 2 minutes left here. They would get across midfield, but would not be able to score, so they keep the 13-6 lead going into half. To start the third quarter, Huntingdon will get the ball here, but it still looks like Kennedy Young is out and Carter is in at quarterback. First down here, Carter takes her shot deep, but it looks like there's a miscommunication. The receiver cuts in while Carter is throwing more towards the sideline, and this one is pretty easily intercepted by Milligan Sophia Anderson here. So a tough way to start. She also gets a nice return as Milligan, with 11:41 left in the third, starts with a 1st and 20 in the red zone here. And so here we go. Huntingdon try to stop them from scoring and making this a 2-score game. Milligan goes down and calls a hook and ladder. That goes for 8. On 2nd and 12 here, Keiser with the RPO finds Caitlin Quinn on the out route to make it 3rd and 7. On 3rd down here, Keiser checks it down here, but her check down is not able to score. She's just short, but it is 4th and 3, so very manageable here. And so here we go, 4th and 3, Milligan looking to make it a 2-score game. Keiser tries to thread the needle to Krista Quinn in the corner, and she brings it in, but it doesn't look like she's able to get a foot in bounds here. So that is a turnover on downs. A great throw by Keiser, but it's just one of those games where, you know, it's a game of inches, and it just so happened that her foot was out of bounds. And so Huntingdon getting away with one. Now 1st and 17, 9 minutes left here in that first quadrant. Carter still in at quarterback. She goes ahead and gets the snap, jukes the rusher, and then takes off to make it a manageable 2nd and 10 out of danger of potentially getting a safety, at least for now. And so 2nd down here, Carter with the snap, throws the drag route to Michaela Allen. She goes ahead and picks up the 1st down, making it 1st and 20. Following that, Carter checks it down again to Jaquel Tucker. She gets a solid 5. On 2nd down here, Carter with the snap decides to take off left, and she gets a nice gain, slipping by some defenders to make it 3rd and 3. 3rd down here, it's a high snap. Carter kind of tries to stab a hand up with what I think it's a right hand to corral this one, but it's just way too high. And so now it's 4th and 10, and unfortunately, a Huntingdon drive comes to a stop right here, and they have to punt. So here we go, Milligan with 6 minutes left, looking to put them away. 1st and 7 approaching midfield. They call the hook and ladder to so she goes ahead and makes it 1st and 13 past midfield. Following a drop on 2nd down, Keiser throws it to the flats here. That makes it 3rd and 8. Keiser then throws it right to Caitlin Quinn on the curl. She goes ahead and puts them in the red zone, making it 1st and 18. I believe on every Milligan offensive drive so far of this game, they've made it into the red zone. So another chance to go up by 2 scores. Now, unfortunately, Milligan would commit kind of a tough penalty that would make it a 2nd and 25 in the red zone. And then on 3rd and 18, after a Caitlin Quinn catch here, Keiser would take her shot deep to the corner route, but her receiver would drop yet another touchdown pass. And so unfortunately, it's now 4th and long. Keiser just launches this one deep, but this one's out of bounds. And so it's yet another Milligan red zone drive with no score here. Huntingdon hanging around. They now have a 1st and 2 with 1:46 left. And on top of that, Kennedy Young comes back into the game here. So here we go, Huntingdon still in business here at full power with Kennedy Young at quarterback on 1st down. She just launches a beauty of a throw to Amani Bentley on the skinny post, a massive splash play, who brings it in, obviously, to make it 1st and 17 past midfield. And so here we go, Huntingdon driving. Young goes ahead and throws the drag route to a running back. She makes it 2nd and 1. Young will then go ahead and go back to her, but she would fall down while trying to cut up field, but still gets the 1st down. It's now 1st and 17 in the red zone. On 1st down and 17, last play of the 3rd quarter, Young throws the curl left to Aaliyah Richard. That goes for a decent gain, and that's where we are to start the 4th quarter. Huntingdon in the red zone, 2nd and 8. A score could potentially lead to them tying the game, but they got to score first here. And so here we go. Huntingdon runs their own hook and ladder, but she is stopped short of scoring here. So now it's 4th and 2 here, and they call a timeout at 11:17 left. And so here we go, 4th and 2. Young drops back, pump fakes, and scrambles, reaching out and gets in to go ahead and make Huntingdon trail Milligan only 13-12 here, cutting into that lead. On the massive PAT here, looking to tie the game, Young with the snap goes ahead and lofts a touch pass to the back corner of the end zone to JUCO Tucker, who brings it in. A perfect throw and catch to tie this one at 13-13, less than 10 minutes left in this game. And so here we go, Milligan officially on upset alert, has to go ahead and put together a drive here. And so here's what happens. Keiser goes ahead and finds Bridges left here for the first down to make it 1st and 17. Keiser then finds Krista Quinn on a nice gain of 9. She then rolls out left on 2nd down and finds Bridges on the curl. She goes ahead and brings this one in and some to make it 1st and 10 past midfield just like that. 1st down here past midfield, looking to get into the red zone. Keiser goes ahead and throws this one, and they run the hook and ladder, this time to Caitlin Quinn. She brings it in to make it 2nd and 3. They then run some play action here. Keiser rolling left and finds, I think it's Ashton Weirley on a drag, and she goes ahead and puts them in the red zone for like the millionth time today, I feel. So now it's 1st and 12 in the red zone. They are looking to score to take the lead here. Keiser scrambles left and then pitches it out, but it maybe only goes for a yard here. Following an overthrow on 2nd down, on 3rd down, Keiser launches one left to a receiver, but she is not able to control the ball on this throw, and so that is dropped. Would have been a touchdown. So now that brings up 4th down for Milligan and Keiser. Here's what happens. Bridget Keiser with the snap, puts the ball on the line left to her dig route, and it's brought in to make it 19-13. A great throw and just a great catch here into a tight window to retake the lead. On the PAT, Keiser rolls left before finding someone over the middle to go ahead and give them the 20-13 lead, a 7-point lead, but for Huntingdon, they still got 4:51 left. Plenty of time here, but probably their last drive unless they get a big splash play to get this drive going. And so here we go. First down, Young checks it down to Tucker on the wheel route to make it 2nd and 1. Young then finds St. Just in the flats outright to give them their first down of the drive, making it 1st and 17. Following that, Young finds her post route here on the money, but it is dropped. A tough misplay here, bringing up 2nd down. Young then finds Tucker on the drag route. She gets about 6. Young, following that, goes ahead and scrambles right here and gives them a 1st down and 13 past midfield. Huntingdon now rolling here with Young at the helm. Young goes ahead and checks it down to Tucker, who outruns the rusher and backer for a decent gain, making it 2nd and 3. Just under now 2 minutes, I think the 2-minute warning just hit. Young finds Alyssa Lados on the curl to give them a 1st and 14 in the red zone. So here we go, Huntingdon with 4 plays to score here, but unfortunately, for Milligan and offsides on them would go ahead and make it 2nd and 7 after that 1st down play. Then there's an incompletion, so now it's 3rd down here. 3rd down, Young finds Tucker on the wheel route, who splits the defenders, reaching out the football, and gets in. A tough call here. It looks really close, slowing it down, but the refs call her in. So now it is 20-19. Huntingdon with a chance to either tie the game or take the lead. They decide to go for the tie, playing for overtime here. And Young with the snap tries to throw the drag route, but the linebacker just knocks this one away as Milligan takes over with a minute 26 left here. And they go ahead and end up icing the game. Richard Keiser throwing for a 1st down as they escape with one over Huntingdon 20-19 in an absolute thriller of a game. And I don't believe I have stats for this one. Nope, no stats for this one, which is unfortunate. But playmaker of the game, I think, has to be Bridget Keiser. She came through. I mean, I think this Milligan offense on every drive except for the last one where they were just trying to ice the game, they got into the red zone. And so that's peak efficiency. She played really well here. And, you know, there were just a couple plays that unfortunately her receivers were not able to make this, you know, more of a wider margin. But, you know, at the end of the day, she came through and they won the game 20-19 and remain undefeated. For Huntingdon, you know, not a bad showing at all. One does have to wonder if Kennedy Young gets those 2 drives back, 2 drives and a PAT attempt back. Would Huntingdon have scored? I have no idea. I think it would have been really close regardless. And I mean, Milligan probably would have had a chance to score as well. They got the ball back with a minute 20 or so as well. So they would have had to stop this Milligan offense who drove on them into the red zone every play or every drive. So there is that. But, you know, it is something to think about. But for Huntingdon, you know, this basically wraps up their season. They would go on and play LaGrange here, as that would be their last game. This would be their second to last game, and then the LaGrange game would be their last one here. But, you know, they would go ahead and be 13-3. That would only be their 3rd loss ever of this season. Their other 2 was a 26-24 loss to Campbellsville very early on, and then they lost to Milligan again, 39-19, very early in February. And then, you know, they played Milligan very close, a team who is almost guaranteed a shot at the NAIA Invitational. So if you're Huntingdon, I mean, this is a great second year. I want to say it's second year of the program. It does say, well, okay. So you can't go back to 2023, but they didn't list any games there. Last year, they were 3-10. This year, including this Milligan game, they are 13-3. That's a massive improvement there. Granted, they did play Hendricks a couple times, but this team has looked pretty good, and they have a very good young core to work with. So looking forward to seeing what they do here moving forward. So I just saw this. They are listed as a club team on their website, but I would be interested. They are an NCAA D3 program. I would be interested to see if they would qualify for the Women's College Flag Finals, and if so, that could get really interesting, having another quality team in that tournament. But for now, they fall to Milligan 20-19.
What is going on, y'all? This is Gino with the Playmaker's Corner podcast, and it is time to recap Week 9 of the 2026 Women's College Flag Football season here in the NAIA division. This week was the final week of the regular season games for the vast majority of the teams we're about to go over, and that means that the national tournament, as well as the conference tournaments, are right around the corner here for us. We got a bunch of games to go over though first, so let's not waste any more time and check out what happened this week in the NAIA division. With a few of the regular season championships going down in the NAIA division this week in Week 9, I'm going to go ahead and highlight those first here in our key games of the week. On Thursday, April 9th, number 10 ranked Hope International took down Benedictine Mesa 40-6, and this was their final regular season game here, and this secured the first ever GSAC Women's Flag Football regular season championship. Checking out the stats here for Hope International, their QB Anahi Morales went 12 for 16 for 216 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception here. As far as receivers go, the leader here for Hope International was Anna Sedic with 4 receptions for 86 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Madison Powell also got herself 2 receiving touchdowns, and Nicole Ruiz caught herself 1 as well. Looking at the stats on defense, it was Madison Powell who had an absolutely electric game. She led the way with 12 total flag pulls. That was 3 times more than the next closest. She also had 3 tackles for loss. And then Larissa Perez had an interception. And as far as sacks goes, Samantha Myers and Ashley Venzer both had 1 each. Looking at the stats for Benedictine Mesa, their QB Gianni Ruiz went 26 for 40 for 204 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. As far as receivers go, Haley Foster led the way with 6 receptions for 63 yards, and then Brooklyn Miller led the team in receptions with 10 on 61 yards receiving. Defensively here, Isabella Misquez had an interception. Next up here for number 10 ranked Hope International, they will be facing Simpson in the first round of the GSAC postseason tournament. In the next key game here from Week 9, number 5 Ottawa got revenge over number 6 Kansas Wesleyan in one of the best games of the year here by a score of 27-21, and that secured their 6th straight KCAC regular season title. Looking at the stats here for Ottawa, this might have been Anna Anderson's best game of the year. She went 28 for 34, 241 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, and then she also added a rushing touchdown here. Just amazing consistency and efficiency throughout this game to secure another regular season title for the Braves. Looking at the receiving room, looks like Alyssa Linkus caught 2 receiving touchdowns, and then Tatiana Dos Santos caught the other one. Olga Sotillo also had a great game with 10 receptions. That led the team in 66 receiving yards. That also led the team here. Defensively for Ottawa, this was a great game here for Casey Hart. She led the way with 10 total flag pulls. And then Olga Sotillo got the only interception of the game. And of course, Sue Kaufman getting in there with some nice stats. She had 3 flag pulls and a sack. As far as Kansas Wesleyan goes, they fought very hard in this game. But, Chihiro Awada attempted nearly 60 passes in this one, trying to secure that win. But ultimately, they just could not get it done. Chihiro Awada went 37 for 57 for 228 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception here. As far as receivers go, Jasmine Whitfield led the team in receptions and yards with 13 receptions for 91 yards. Aaliyah Wood had 10 receptions as well with the receiving touchdown. Then Aaliyah Young and Yui Watanabe both had 1 receiving touchdown each here. Defensively for Kansas Wesleyan, Kylie Douglas had 3 tackles for loss. Laura Hernandez-Sanchez had a sack, and Aaliyah Wood and both Kylie Douglas led the way with 6 flag pulls in this one. Looking ahead now to the KCAC tournament, this could very well be a preview of the championship there, but you'd never know. Honestly, with Kansas Wesleyan, Ottawa, and Baker, any of those 3 teams could win it this year. And, with Baker losing to Midland a couple of weeks ago, Kansas Wesleyan beating Ottawa about a week ago here, and then Ottawa getting revenge over Kansas Wesleyan, really anyone can win it this year, and it's going to be very exciting to see what goes down in that tournament here in a couple of weeks. Another big game from Saturday in the Sun Conference this time was between number 18 Weber and number 9 ranked St. Thomas, a double overtime classic where Weber kept their postseason hopes alive here with a 13-7 double overtime win here over St. Thomas. Let's check out the stats here for Weber International. Their QB, Luzariana Herrera, definitely struggled a bit with the accuracy early on in this game, but it got better as the game went on. She went 27 for 46 with 2 passing touchdowns and an interception. And then also here, as far as receivers go, Riley Bolser leading the way, no surprise there in receptions and yards, with 11 receptions for 59 yards and a receiving touchdown. And finally here, Caitlin Sigmundi also with 5 receptions, 21 yards, and the game-winning touchdown in double overtime. Defensively here for Weber, Kalia Gator might have solidified herself as a finalist for Rusher of the Year in this one. She completely shut down St. Thomas's offense in the second half, especially towards the end of fourth quarter and in overtime. An absolute game wrecker, that Kalia Gator. She is amazing here. She finished with 6 flag pulls and 3.5 sacks. Riley Bolser also with a big game, 12 flag pulls, 2 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks here. Cheyenne Durand, one of the top defensive backs in the country, added an interception, and Savannah Cox led the way with 13 total flag pulls for Weber. Looking at the stats here for St. Thomas, Sharice Newton went 20 for 32 for 157 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. Leah Cruz had a solid game, going 5 for 5 for 52 yards. Sharice Newton added a rushing touchdown as well. The leading receiver for St. Thomas was Dominique Perez-Moore with 5 receptions for 82 yards in this one here. Now, defensively for St. Thomas, they definitely held their own. Maya Salas had an interception. Angel Johnson had 5 total flag pulls and a sack. And then Mia Hastings led the way with 6 total flag pulls. Weber keeping their postseason hopes alive. They have a lot of absolute legends here on their team that are seniors. So it's great to see that they are making a push here to stay in this mix, to be one of those top 8 teams to play for that national championship here. Shout out to both of these squads, though, for a classic game and just a great way to end both of their regular seasons here ahead of the Sun Conference postseason tournament. Now, this next game didn't necessarily have 2 teams that were competing for a top 8 spot in the country, but it was still a fantastic game between 2 very familiar foes in the KCAC, between Midland and Southwestern. Midland keeps their win streak alive here with a 14-13 win. Looking at the stats here for Midland, Lotta Wolf went 24 for 32 with 230 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Her leading receiver was going to be Aaliyah Livingston with 5 receptions for 74 yards and a receiving touchdown, and Emily Farron caught the other receiving touchdown here. Defensively for Midland, Alyssa Butler had an interception, and Emily Farron led the way with 8 flag pulls. Checking out the stats here for Southwestern, Kennedy Hayes went 25 for 40 for 196 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 2 turnovers. Viviana Solis had 5 receptions for 68 yards and 1 receiving touchdown, and Mary Jones led the way with 9 receptions for 64 yards and another receiving touchdown. Defensively for Midland, Kennedy Wesley led the way with 10 flag pulls. Andrea Moon had 2 sacks, and Ayanna Sims and Lilibeth Rico both had 1 interception each. And while neither of these teams are going to be competing for that top 8 spot here, both of them have been getting a lot better as the season's been going on, especially Midland. They are on quite the heater here after beating Baker a couple of weeks ago. So it's just great to see that both of these teams are competing when the stakes are highest. In our last key game here, it looks like Cotty is back on the winning side of things. They took down Texas Wesleyan on Sunday, April 12th by a score of 13-6, and that'll be their 4th win of this year. No stats in that one, but that is definitely a great win for Cotty as their regular season is coming to a close here soon. Now that we are done checking out those key games here, let's go ahead and check out what happened for the rest of the week in the NAIA division in Week 9. Starting off with Monday, April 6th, Graceland went ahead and destroyed Bethel by a score of 72-0. No stats in that one, but looking now to Tuesday, April 7th, number 1 ranked Warner and number 18 Weber faced off in a classic battle between two schools with basically just a lake separating their campuses. Warner went ahead and got the win 46-6 this time around. Weber actually went ahead and forced a few turnovers on the MVP favorite, Catherine Hutchinson. She went 36 for 47 for 359 yards, 6 passing touchdowns, and 3 turnovers here. Now, looking at the receiving stats for Warner, Jessica Finley had 11 receptions for 99 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. All 3 of those stats led the team. Maggie Lauber had 5 receptions for 86 yards and a receiving touchdown. Mariah Gordon had a receiving touchdown as well. And then Anna Vincenzini had 2 receiving touchdowns here. Defensively for the Royals, Andrea Castillo led the way with 5 total flag pulls, and she and Angeline Bunting both had an interception each. And then Lauren Clark had a sack, and Mariah Quinn also had an interception. As far as stats go here for Weber, Luzariana Herrera went 25 for 37 for 131 yards and 0 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions. For receivers for Weber, Yasmin Lott led the team in yards with 47 yards, and Riley Bolser led the way with 7 receptions here. Defensively for Weber, Riley Bolser and Quanisha Benelli led the team with 10 total flag pulls. Benelli also had an interception. Speaking of interceptions, Igiana Edwards had 2 interceptions here on the MVP favorite, Catherine Hutchinson. Sorry if I mispronounced that name. And then Kalia Gator, no surprise here, had 2 sacks in this one, helping out Weber defensively. Let's take a quick look now at the games from the GSAC Arizona Jamboree. First up here, number 10 International kicked off the final week of the regular season games for the GSAC's inaugural season with a 32-7 win over Arizona Christian. Anahi Morales had a very efficient game for Hope International. She went 16 for 22 for 132 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and no turnovers here. She also added 47 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Anna Sedic led the team with 2 receiving touchdowns. Larissa Perez and Layla Mays both had 1 receiving touchdown as well here. But it was Nicole Cruz who led the team in receptions and yards with 6 receptions for 61 yards. Defensively here for Hope International, Madison Powell led the way big time with 8 flag pulls and a tackle for loss, and Samantha Myers had a sack. Arizona Christian got back in the winning column here in their next game, also from Wednesday. They took down Simpson by a score of 20-6. CeCe Macagnano had a great game, going 21 for 30 for 201 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Her leading receiver was going to be Michaela Navarro, who had a fantastic game. 9 receptions, 93 receiving yards, and all 3 of those receiving touchdowns were going to go to her here. Now, defensively for Arizona Christian, Alana Delacio had 10 total flag pulls. That led the team, and Shea Gonzalez had 5 flag pulls and a tackle for loss. Looking now at Simpson, Sophia Wright went 28 for 44, 175 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and no turnovers. Her leading receiver was Kylie Schultz with 10 receptions for 41 yards, and Taylor Zalunardo had 5 receptions for 23 yards and a receiving touchdown. Defensively for Simpson, Dania Greer led the way with 7 flag pulls, and Sophia Wright had 2 sacks, and Juelia Zaragoza also had a sack. As I mentioned before here, Simpson will be facing off against Hope International in the first round of the GSAC postseason tournament. Still on Wednesday from that Arizona Jamboree for the GSAC tournament, looks like Benedictine Mesa got a big-time win over Simpson by a score of 27-12. Gianna Ruiz might have had her best game of her young career so far, going 27 for 38 for 231 passing yards with 4 passing touchdowns and no turnovers. Her leading receiver was Brooklyn Miller with 9 receptions for 72 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, Ashley Catalina had a great game as well here with 6 receptions for 60 yards and a receiving touchdown. And don't forget about Isabella Mizquez with 3 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown here. Defensively for Benedictine Mesa, Haley Foster led the way with 5 flag pulls, and Isabella Mizquez and Brooklyn Miller both had an interception. For Simpson, their QB Sophia Wright struggled a bit in this one, going 19 for 33 for 156 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 2 turnovers. Looking at the receivers here for Simpson, their leading receiver was Deborah Aguirre with 5 receptions for 51 receiving yards, and Kylie Schultz with 4 receptions, 29 receiving yards, and both of those receiving touchdowns went to her. Defensively for Simpson, they had some big performances despite the loss. Dania Greer had 10 total flag pulls, which led the team, and a tackle for loss. Taylor Zalunardo had 8 flag pulls and 2 tackles for loss, and Sophia Wright with 5 total flag pulls, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack. Still on Wednesday here, La Sierra got a big win over Benedictine Mesa, 27-7. Statistically here for La Sierra, Ariana Rivera had a great game, going 22 for 34, 225 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and only 1 turnover. She also added 24 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. For receivers, it looks like 3 different receivers caught a receiving touchdown. Grace Galdamez had 4 receptions for 92 yards and a receiving touchdown. And then Haley Medina had 7 receptions for 52 yards and a receiving touchdown here. Defensively for La Sierra, Kaylee Green with a massive game, 3 flag pulls, but that was not the highlight. She had 3 interceptions just for herself here. You also had Mackenzie McMillan with 9 flag pulls. That led the team. She also added an interception. And Sandrine Labayan, sorry if I mispronounced that there, added 3 flag pulls and a sack. For Benedictine Mesa, they struggled a bit here. Gianni Ruiz had 4 turnovers offensively. And now, as far as receivers go, Brooklyn Miller led the way, 7 receptions, 51 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Defensively here for Benedictine Mesa, they did actually end up forcing 2 turnovers, with Aubriana Herring and Isabella Mizquez both getting an interception. Next up here, number 10 ranked Hope International shut out Ottawa, Arizona by a score of 19-0. Anahi Morales went 25 for 38, 148 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. She also added a rushing touchdown. No surprise there, though. Her leading receiver was Nicole Cruz with 7 receptions for 57 yards. Madison Powell and Anna Sedic both had a receiving touchdown in this one. Defensively, we had some big performances. Larissa Perez, 7 flag pulls. That led the team. 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 1 interception. Just doing it all here for Hope International's defense. You also had Samantha Myers with 3 flag pulls, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack. And Jania Haley also added an interception here for this Hope International defense. Defensively for Ottawa, Arizona, they had Yanni Hall with 3 total flag pulls and a sack, and Sharifa Piamonte with an interception. In the last GSAC game here from Wednesday, La Sierra got a big win over Ottawa, Arizona, 38-6. Ariana Rivera went 15 for 21 for 174 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 turnover. Grace Galdamez also got in there and played some QB. She went 12 for 17, 105 yards, and a passing touchdown, no turnovers. And Danielle Gomez also had a passing touchdown. They also added 2 rushing touchdowns here for La Sierra. Alina Rodriguez and Ariana Rivera both getting 1 apiece. Daniela Gomez led the way with 5 receptions, 84 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Kaylee Mejia had 9 receptions. That led the team, 49 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Defensively here, Mackenzie McMillan keeping it rolling here. 7 flag pulls, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 2 interceptions, making sure that she's doing absolutely everything she can to help out her team. Gia Aldama had a interception as well, and Alina Rodriguez had 2 sacks. Haley Medina added a sack as well for La Sierra. Now, we're going to stay here on Wednesday, April 8th, but we're going to kick things over to the KCAC and see what happened over there. First up here, we have number 8 ranked Baker. They bounced back from their loss on Saturday to Midland with a 32-6 win over Graceland in their final regular season game of the 2026 season. They will be playing in the KCAC tournament here in a couple of weeks. But let's check out the stats. Tara Lorente went 15 for 25 for 145 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns with no turnovers. She also went ahead and added 80 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, and Natalia Bush added a rushing touchdown as well. For receivers, Jalen Harris was the leading receiver by far with 5 receptions for 80 yards and a receiving touchdown, but you also had Mahogany Simmons and Destiny Martinez both get a receiving touchdown here too. Defensively, for Baker, Faith Phillips had an interception and Natalia Bush had a sack. Let's move ahead here where William Woods took down Cotty by a score of 25-0. This was a great game statistically for William Woods. Their QB Shemaiah Williams went 27 for 42 with 4 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, and 225 passing yards. Her leading receiver was Olivia Menard with 12 receptions for 103 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Addie Chillick also added 7 receptions for 67 yards and a receiving touchdown. Defensively here for William Woods, Nevaeh Boyd had an interception, and Shemaiah Williams led the team with 3 flag pulls. In the last game from Wednesday, April 8th, Kansas Wesleyan took down St. Mary by a score of 34-12. Kansas Wesleyan forced 5 total interceptions from the St. Mary offense. Chihiro Wada went 14 for 30, not her most accurate game, but she had 198 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns with no turnovers. Kansas Wesleyan had 2 rushing touchdowns total, one of them coming from Layla Kassian with 1 rushing touchdown, and so did Chihiro Wada. She added 1 as well here. For receivers, Aaliyah Wood had 2 receptions, both of those going for touchdowns for 81 yards here, and Janice Washington also had a receiving touchdown. Defensively for Kansas Wesleyan, it is a big week here for Kylie Douglas. 11 flag pulls, that led the team. 2 total tackles for loss and 1 sack. For interceptions, Janice Washington caught 2 for herself, and then Ava Dwyer, Zoe Lucas, and Samari McKinney all had 1 each. Let's move ahead now to Thursday, April 9th. First off, I'm going to start off here with the final 2 games from the GSAC Arizona Jamboree. This first one was a big one here because it's a preview of the first round of the GSAC tournament. Arizona Christian got a very surprising win over La Sierra here by a score of 26-14. Statistically for Arizona Christian, Cece Macagnano with a great game. She went 23 for 38 for 244 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and no turnovers at all. Rushing the ball here, Sayla Childress had 2 rushing touchdowns on 19 rushing yards. Looking at the receivers here for Arizona Christian, Kayla Yaniguez led the way with 6 receptions for 64 yards and a receiving touchdown, and Michaela Navarro had a big game as well with 4 receptions, 58 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Defensively for Arizona Christian, Bella Huguez, sorry if I mispronounced that there, had 2 sacks and 4 flag pulls, and Shayna Hunton and Carly Reeves both had 1 interception each. This was a tough game for La Sierra offensively here. Ariana Rivera went 27 for 38 for 186 yards, 1 passing touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Haley Medina ran in a rushing touchdown. For receivers for La Sierra, Haley Medina, 9 receptions, 62 yards. That led the team. And Kaylee Mejia with 9 receptions for 58 yards and a receiving touchdown. In the last game from the Arizona GSAC Jamboree here, Simpson finally got a win here, this time over Ottawa, Arizona, by a score of 32-6. Sophia Wright went 20 for 33 for 173 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 2 turnovers. She also added a rushing touchdown and 32 yards rushing, and Kylie Schultz also added a rushing touchdown here. For receivers, it was Deborah Aguirre leading the way with 5 receptions for 66 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Taylor Zalunardo staying hot here with 5 receptions, 42 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Defensively for Simpson, Taylor Zalu-Nardo, a fantastic game in this win. 12 total flag pulls, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and she also added an interception here, just doing it all for the Simpson defense in this win here. You also had Kalia Johnson with 1 interception, and Kylie Schultz and Tyra Drake also had an interception here for the Simpson defense. We are going to close out this Thursday recap here with some Sun Conference action. Here we had St. Thomas shut out Florida Memorial by a score of 26-0. Offensively for St. Thomas, Leah Cruz had a great game. 8 for 14, 67 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and no turnovers. Sharice Newton also had a great game, very efficient, going 20 for 25, 185 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and no turnovers. Looking at the receivers for St. Thomas, they had 4 different receivers have 1 receiving touchdown. It was Alex Harris and Dominique Moore that led the way, though, with 6 receptions. Alex Harris led the team, though, with 62 receiving yards. Defensively for St. Thomas, Jasmine Henry with potentially her best game of the year. She had 4 sacks in this one, on top of leading the team in flag pulls with 5. Outside of that, you had Nyla Gigger with 3 interceptions just for herself, and she also added a receiving touchdown as well for the Bobcats in this win. In the second to last game from Thursday, Life destroyed Reinhardt by a score of 39-13. Cheyenne Brooks with an electric game. She went 18 for 26, 249 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, no turnovers at all. She went ahead and also added a rushing touchdown to make it 6 total touchdowns in this game here. Her leading receiver was Altiera Gooch. Gooch had 3 receptions, with all 3 of those going for touchdowns, with 93 receiving yards. Alora Niederprum, sorry if I mispronounced that there, and Reagan Washington all had 1 receiving touchdown each as well here. Defensively for Life, it was a great game for Kyra Zachary. No surprise, she had 3 sacks in this one, adding to her season total. You also had Umi Gay with 1 interception. But it was Enhoa Garcia Velasco, sorry if I mispronounced that there, that led the team with 10 total flag pulls here. In the last game from Thursday, April 9th, Point lost a rough one to number 23 ranked Thomas by a score of 47-6. Let's check out the box score stats in this one for Thomas. Destiny Lockett with an amazing game. She went 16 for 23, 197 pass yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and not a single turnover. She wasn't done there. She added 2 rushing touchdowns as well, making it 6 total in that one. For receivers, Ariana Christian with 5 receptions, 66 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. But you also had Diva Jones and Sabrina Schlegelmilk, sorry if I mispronounced that there, with 1 receiving touchdown as well. But they weren't done here. Nika Dean also added a receiving touchdown. Defensively for Thomas, it was Destiny Lockett leading the way there as well. She had 8 flag pulls. That led the team. She also added a sack and an interception, literally doing it all on both sides of the ball here for Thomas. You also had Diva Jones with 2 sacks and Amira Logan with an interception. Looking now to Friday, April 10th, number 14 ranked Lindsey Wilson went ahead and got the win over Cumberland by a score of 33-13. Amaya Pablo with an electric game. She went 23 for 39, 4 passing touchdowns, no turnovers, and 260 passing yards. But of course she wasn't done there. 9 total attempts, 56 rushing yards, and another rushing touchdown, making it 5 total touchdowns in this one here. For receivers, Carly Yoakley led the way with 7 receptions for 81 yards. Gabby Cruz was right behind her with 6 receptions for 80 yards. And then you had Demi Sermon and Jenna Lindsay both get 2 receptions each. Defensively for Lindsey Wilson, the Gregories both had 3 interceptions total, with 1 going to Emerson Gregory and 2 going to Harper. Looking at stats for Cumberland, Madison Woodard went 23 for 47 for 277 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 3 turnovers. Her leading receiver was Marley Hyde with 9 receptions for 115 yards with a receiving touchdown. And Jalea Cole also had a great game with 3 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown. Defensively for Cumberland, you had Jocelyn Diaz with 2 total flag pulls and 1.5 sacks. And Candace Dedrick had a sack as well. In the last game from Friday, April 10th, number 15 ranked Life went ahead and stayed hot with a big win here, 39-6 over Alabama State. Cheyenne Brooks with 6 passing touchdowns. She went 13 for 25 for 237 yards, and she also had a turnover as well, along with those 6 passing touchdowns. Her leading receivers were Altiera Gooch and Alora Niederprum. Altiera Gooch had 4 receptions for 100 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns, and Niederprum here with 3 receiving touchdowns. Caitlin Gibson also caught one as well here for Life. Defensively for Life, Kennedy Ryan led the way with 3 total flag pulls and 2 sacks. But you also had Promise Cooper and Layla Wade and Xavier Mann all get an interception. Xavier Mann had 2, though, just for herself. Moving along now to Saturday, April 11th. In our first game here, Graceland took care of business 15-0 over Texas Wesleyan. Statistically for Graceland, Sierra Flores went 17 for 29 for 173 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a turnover. For receivers for Graceland, Ayana Hanna and Sydney Gann both had 1 receiving touchdown each. Ayana Hanna led the team with 93 receiving yards. Defensively, Kylie Overcamp led the team here with 9 flag pulls, 3 sacks, and an interception, just doing it all for that defense. You also had Sadie Lee with 9 flag pulls, tying the lead for the team. In the next game on Saturday, Graceland kept it rolling with a 29-6 win over North Central Missouri College. Statistically here, Sierra Flores went 23 for 38 for 159 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and no turnovers. Jada Lammy had a rushing touchdown. For receivers, Jada Lammy also led the team with 11 receptions, 69 yards, and a receiving touchdown. But you also had Sydney Gann and Michaela Brown also get one as well here as far as receiving touchdowns go here for Graceland. Defensively, it was Kylie Overcamp once again leading the team. 8 flag pulls and 2 sacks in this one here. Also defensively here for Graceland, Tykeria Thomas had a sack and Delaney Mondino had an interception. Moving along now, St. Mary got a big-time win on Saturday over William Woods 25-6. This is a huge stepping stone win for Coach Ellie Campbell and the rest of the St. Mary program. Looking at the stats for St. Mary, Kyendra Thomas went 12 for 25 for 114 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and no turnovers. But you already know she was using that dual threat ability. She also added 59 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And Charisma Delgado also added a rushing touchdown here. The leading receiver for St. Mary is going to be Demi Hilton with a 63-yard receiving touchdown. You also had Ava Lavea with a receiving touchdown here. Defensively for St. Mary, Ellie Miranda with, I don't know if this is true, but Ellie Miranda with 10 total flag pulls, 10 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. I have no idea if that is true or not, but that is absolutely unbelievable if so. Looking at the stats here for William Woods, this was definitely not their best game offensively or defensively here. Shemaya Williams went 13 for 29, 96 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and no turnovers. Now, defensively here for William Woods, they had a very great performance from Sam Menard with 5 total flag pulls, 5 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks here. You also had Annie Glasper with a tackle for loss. Keeping things rolling here, Midland went ahead and shut out Texas Wesleyan 25-0. Lotta Wolf went 18 for 24 for 200 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and only 1 interception here. She had 4 different players get a receiving touchdown, those being Holiness Hodges, Emily Farron, Aaliyah Livingston, and Melanie Archuleta. Defensively for Midland, you had Emily Farron get an interception, and Melanie Archuleta lead the team with 5 flag pulls. Number 4 ranked Milligan had 2 wins on Saturday, one being a 52-0 blowout win over LaGrange. And then the other game, they actually almost got upset by the very sneaky number 20 ranked Huntingdon Redhawks. Now that was a game, you could ask Simon, you could ask Cody, I was definitely saying was going to be a close one. Huntingdon has some ridiculous athletes over there, and I really thought they were going to catch Milligan by surprise. And they almost did. They almost got the win there. So that's a big time game there for Huntingdon. No stats in either of those games, but it's very interesting to see, teams get close to that Milligan undefeated record here. Almost got one there, but maybe next year here for Huntingdon. Let's look at some Sun Conference action here from Saturday. Number 23 ranked Thomas got a 41-6 win over Bruton Parker. Destiny Lockett, 15 for 19, 169 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and no turnovers. Cam King went in there and also went 14 for 21 for 117 yards with a passing touchdown and no turnovers. Destiny Lockett added a rushing touchdown, of course, here. For receivers, Diva Jones led the way with 7 receptions for 91 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Ariana Christian and Ayanna Harris and Maya Richards also had one receiving touchdown, each. Defensively here for Thomas, Amiri Logan had 4 total tackles that led the way on the team and an interception and a tackle for loss. Diva Jones had a sack, and Destiny Lockett, Azariah Greer, and Nika Dean all had 1 interception each. Moving along now, Reinhardt had a 51-6 blowout win over Andrew College. Addie Anderson stepped in here for Reinhardt and had a great game. She went 17 for 24 for 202 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Alexis Wilson also went 7 for 12 for 87 yards and a passing touchdown. Wilson went ahead and added 40 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown too, and Kalia Wimbush also got a rushing touchdown. For receivers, it was Blythe Townsell leading the way with 4 receptions for 71 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. You also had Alexis Wilson with a receiving touchdown, Tatiana Owlicock with a receiving touchdown, and finally here, Johanna Clofus and Rebecca Jenkins both had a receiving touchdown as well here. That's a lot of receiving touchdowns. Now on defense here, Kalia Davis had an interception, and Danielle Jones led the team with 5 total flag pulls. And looking at it here, it looks like Dakota Rowley also had an interception for Reinhardt. Now we're going to look at the last 2 games of the week here from Sunday, April 12th. Graceland got their 3rd win of the week with a 38-6 win over Heston. That's a great win and a great week here for Graceland to close out their regular season. Sierra Flores went 18 for 31 with 4 passing touchdowns and 1 interception and 190 passing yards. She went ahead and added a rushing touchdown, and so did Jada Lammy. For receivers, it was Delaney Mondino with 9 receptions, 117 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Electric game from Mondino. And Jada Lammy got a receiving touchdown on top of her rushing touchdown. Defensively, they had 3 interceptions, with Grace Jensen, Ayana Hannah, and Sierra Flores all getting 1 each. And Tykeria Thomas had 3 sacks in this one. In the last game, I'm going to be recapping here before the game of the week. We have Texas Wesleyan. They got the W over Pratt Community College on Sunday by a score of 18-13. And that, folks, is going to do it here for the bulk of the NAIA recap. Coming up next here, I'm going to be recapping what happened in the Sun Conference regular season championship between number 3 ranked Keiser and number 1 ranked Warner. So definitely stay tuned for that one here. Alrighty, folks, so now that we've got the NAIA conference hammered down here for week 9, let's go ahead and recap the absolute game of the year for the Sun Conference regular season title between the number 1 ranked Warner Royals and the number 3 ranked Keiser Seahawks. The amount of hype for this game is absolutely insane. You've got Team USA talent littering the field. You've got international talent littering the field. I mean, it's unbelievable how much talent is on the field at one time when these two teams play. So you already know that we are excited to cover this one. I don't want to waste any more time here, so let's just jump right into this recap and see who took home the 2026 Sun Conference regular season title. It's going to be Keiser ball here, 1st and 6 to start off this Sun Conference regular season championship game. On 1st and 6, the QB Ava Wallace rolls out right, and she hits Ashley Clam on the deep corner route for a big gain. It is now 1st and 6 near midfield for the Seahawks. On 1st down, Ava Wallace finds Janasia Wilson on 2nd and 4 for a 1st down, but a penalty there on Keiser will make it 2nd and 11. Following a couple of deep balls that were incomplete, one of them to Ashley Clam and the other one to Tremisha Harris, Keiser is going to go for it here on 4th and 11 for some reason, and it's Anna Vincenzini who easily swats down Wallace's rollout pass for a turnover on downs. Big time play there from Vincenzini, and it is now 1st and 9 for Warner near the red zone. On 1st down, a dump-off pass to Serenity Hickman is shut down by Dakota Moberg to make it 2nd and 10. On 2nd down, Catherine Hutchinson hits Maggie Lauber on the slant for 4 yards. And then Warner goes all hitches here on the next play as Hutchinson fires it to Jessica Finley, who makes some moves to get a 1st down in the red zone. It is 1st and 20 now as Kylie Caetano forces an incompletion on the rush. On 2nd and long, Hutchinson finds a receiver for an 11-yard gain to make it 3rd and 9 here. On 3rd and 9, Hutchinson hits OMG on a slant to make it 4th and 2. On 4th and down, Keiser locks down the rollout play and forces an incompletion for a huge turnover on downs. It'll be 1st and 18 for Keiser with a long way to go here. On 1st down, a quick pass to Dakota Moberg goes for 10 yards. And then Ava Wallace follows that up as she dances out of a sack and spins her way to a 1st down to make it 1st and 20. On 1st down, Wallace finds Ashley Clam in the flats for 6 yards. And after that, she slings it under heavy pressure to Dakota Moberg, who leaps up and makes an insane catch as she falls to the ground. But an illegal block on Keiser will push them back 5 more yards and wipe out that big play there. On 2nd and 19, Wallace finds Tremisha Harris for a big gain to make it 3rd and 6. On 3rd down, Ava Wallace finds Sophia Caprio in the flats under heavy duress, but it'll be 4th and 3 here. On 4th and 3, a delayed slant to Tremisha Harris in stride gets Keiser a 1st down across midfield. On 1st and 16, a penalty there on Warner will make it 1st and 9 as Keiser's really starting to get rolling here offensively. On 1st and 9, Wallace is flushed out right, and her pass to Janasia Wilson is well covered. On 2nd and 9, Tremisha Harris takes a slant and makes 2 linebackers miss as she goes for a 1st down in the red zone to make it 1st and 19. On 1st down, Tremisha Harris is going off as she beats the safety, and Ava Wallace finds her near the end zone, so close to a touchdown there. It is going to be 2nd and 1 for the Seahawks. On 2nd down, Ava Wallace floats it to a wide open Ashley Clam in the back of the end zone for the touchdown. The Seahawks lead the number 1 team in the country 7-0 as we head to the end of the first quarter. Warner's going to get the ball back here, and on 1st and 6, they go double QB. Hutchinson launches it deep down the sideline to Maggie Lauber, who has her DB beat, but the ball is dropped. That would have easily gone for 6 points had it been caught, but that's going to take us to the end of the first quarter here. Keiser leads Warner 7-0. Starting us off here in the second quarter, it is 2nd and 6 for Warner. Hutchinson hits Maggie Lauber for a 1st down to make it 1st and 16. On 1st and 16, she then finds Jessica Finley for 4 yards, and then a flag on Warner will make it 2nd and 17. On 2nd and long, Hutchinson takes her time, and she finds Anna Vincenzini for 7 yards to make it 3rd and medium. On 3rd down, Hutchinson's pass on 4th down is overthrown, so it will be 4th and 10 here. On fourth down, Warner's deciding to go for it for some reason here as Kylie Caetano gets there on the rush and gets a diving flagpole to force a massive turnover on downs on the sack there. Amazing play from Caetano. She is really going off here early in this game. It is now 1st and 3 for Keiser near the red zone here. A quick pass goes for 2 yards, and they follow that up here as Ava Wallace rolls out right, chucks it up for Ashley Clam, but Clam is smothered by the 2025 PMC MVP, Anna Vincenzini, who swats that ball down to make it 3rd and short. On 3rd down, Wallace gets out of the sack and eventually hits Ashley Clam for a first down in the red zone. On 1st and 14, Ava Wallace slings it to Janasia Wilson, who goes up and somehow makes the catch and falls her way into the end zone for a ridiculous touchdown. Keiser now leads the number 1 team in the country 13-0 as Wallace's extra point pass was in triple coverage to Ashley Clam. It is 13-0 with 7 minutes left in the half. Keiser really rolling on both sides of the ball. It is now 1st and 6 for Warner, and they really need an answer. It's now 1st and 20 after a quick pass for a first down, and on 1st and long, Catherine Hutchinson finds the center, who pitches it back for a big gain. And on 2nd and 4 near midfield, a deep pass is well covered by a Keiser DB to make it 3rd and 4. On 3rd and short, a quick hitter to Omariah Gordon for a first down across midfield, and OMG makes that one 1st and 14. On 1st and long, Hutchinson's rollout pass is shut down by none other than Dakota Moberg for a gain of only 1 yard. On 2nd and 13 here, Hutchinson hits Maggie Lauber on a slant for 12 yards, and that makes it 3rd and 1 here. On 3rd and short, Hutchinson chucks a dot to Maggie Lauber, who makes the tough grab in the end zone, but it is called out of bounds. I couldn't really tell. It looked inbounds to me from the stream, but it is what it is. 4th and 1 here for Warner, and Anna Vincenzini takes a quick pass for the first down. On the following play, Hutchinson rolls out, and her tough pass to Avalon Lux Offerman is barely in time for a first down in the red zone here. Pass interference on the next play on Keiser will make it 1st and 6 here for Warner in the red zone. Following an incomplete pass, a sweep to Maggie Lauber is stopped after 2 yards, but there was some sort of flag, so it's going to be a first down for Warner in the red zone here again. A whip route is completely shut down by Keiser here, and then on the next play, Warner finally gets on the board as Catherine Hutchinson got out of a sack and found Avalon Lux Offerman for the touchdown. It is now 13-6 following that Avalon Lux Offerman touchdown here as that extra point was stopped. And Keiser nearly drove the field to end the first half here, but it is still 13-6 as Warner barely got the stop there as we head into halftime. Coming out of halftime, it is 1st and 6 for Warner as they are still down 13-6 here. Hutchinson finds Anna Vincenzini for 4 yards, but a flag on Keiser will make it 1st and 16. On 1st and long, a slant to Maggie Lauber, and she pitches it back to Jessica Finley for a gain of only 2 yards. On 2nd and 14, Isabella DePeace got a check down, and she makes her way out of a loss of yards into a 4-yard gain to make it 3rd and 9. Hutchinson then fires a quick hitter to Anna Vincenzini, who blazes past the defender and takes that one well into Keiser territory. It is 1st and 16 in the red zone now. A check down is shut down by Hannah Jace for a loss of a yard, and then Hutchinson eventually finds her center after surveying for a 7-yard gain, and it's 3rd and 10 in the red zone here for Warner. They're knocking on the door here on that Keiser defense. Let's see who answers. On 3rd and 10, Hutchinson rolls out left, and she finds Jessica Finley in stride as Finley takes it in for the touchdown. It's 13-12. Keiser still has the lead as the extra point was broken up. We have 9 minutes and 15 seconds left here in the third quarter following that Warner touchdown. Keiser would get the ball back, but they would actually only take it across midfield before turning it over on downs with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. It's 1st and 12 now for Warner. Dakota Moberg reads Hutchinson perfectly and nearly picks off that pass for a very clutch interception, but instead it is just incomplete to make it 2nd and 12. On the very next play, a slant to Omariah Gordon, and she takes that across midfield. It is now 1st and 20. On 1st and long, Catherine Hutchinson launches a bomb to Omariah Gordon, who fights through contact, but the ball is called incomplete there. Pass interference on Keiser there will give Warner 1st and 10 in Keiser territory, though. On the next play, Dakota Moberg chases down a receiver on a drag for a gain of only 1 yard. And on 2nd and 9, Isabella DePeace, she takes it to make it 3rd and 1 near the red zone. And on 3rd and 1, a slant to Omariah Gordon gets them the first down to make it 1st and 16. And on 1st down, Tremisha Harris shuts down a quick hitter to Jessica Finley for a loss to make it 2nd and 17. And after that, a quick pass for a short gain will take us to the end of the 3rd quarter. Keiser is still leading the number 1 team in the nation, 13-12, as we head to the final quarter of this game. On the very first play of the final quarter of the game, on 3rd and long, Catherine Hutchinson leans back and slings a perfect pass to Anna Vincenzini on the deep post. And that will give Warner the lead over Keiser for the first time in this one, 18-13. Hutchinson then fires it in a tight window to Omariah Gordon on the slant, but Omariah Gordon makes sure that she has that one as she hauls it in, and that will make the score 19-13. On Keiser's next drive, it would get down to 4th and 6 near midfield as Ava Wallace launches it deep to Ashley Clam, but Anna Vincenzini is all over that coverage to make sure that ball did not get caught. That'll be another huge turnover on downs. Warner would turn it over on downs as well on their next drive, leaving the door open for a Keiser comeback. They would get the ball back, though, as Omariah Gordon gets a game-saving pick over the middle to give the ball back to Warner. And Warner would wear the clock down to inside 2 minutes. And that's when Omariah Gordon took the handoff inside for the game-winning touchdown. Warner wins this one 26-13 for their first ever Sun Conference regular season title. And your playmaker of the game is going to go to none other than OMG, Omariah Gordon, for that game-winning interception and touchdown to end that game. Not to mention some elite coverage throughout that game on defense, to go with some clutch catches also on offense. Congratulations to the Warner Royals for their first ever regular season title, and we really look forward to covering that Sun Conference tournament for both of these squads here soon. This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I want to thank you so much for listening to this NAIA segment of this episode, and we will see you all next week. Peace out.
Hey y'all, it is Cody Stauffer here, who's doing D1, D2 to close out the season, and we didn't have a ton of close games here, and the one that really was interesting was given a full game recap. But anyways, on April 6th, Mount Olive 50-burged Chowan to start. And then on April 7th, Via Maria fell to Sunny Geneseo 32-18. Ferrum and Lees-McRae played an instant classic that helped determine seeding for their Conference Carolinas tournament. Go and listen to that full one. And Lees-McRae, this is a little bit of a spoiler, frustrated here, bounces back and puts up 68 on Hollins just later that day. DeUville, meanwhile, up in the Northeast, dropped a doubleheader to Bryant and Stratton, including a 20-27 heartbreaker. On April 9th, Barton would roll over Mount Olive 82-6 to continue their historic season and help establish their place in the pecking order here. On April 10th, King would roll over Chowan 49-6, and then Ferrum would score 102 in an impressive victory over Chowan as well. Mars Hill appeared to forfeit their last 3 games of the regular season, but in other action, Via Maria goes 3-0 on Friday over Hartford, College of Staten Island, and Bethany College, only allowing 2 scores, and then finish 5-0 through those 2 days, defeating SUNY Cortland and St. Joseph's University in Brooklyn on April 11th. Now, there was a big battle here between 2 of the top half teams in the conference, as Wingate and Emmanuel played a crazy close game here to, once again, had huge implications for the Conference Carolinas tournament that I am going to talk about here shortly. But let's go ahead and talk about this game and just do a little bit of back and forth here. Now, Wingate would lead at the end of the first quarter here, 12-6. But Emmanuel would try and close that gap here as heading into halftime. It was an 18-13 game, but Wingate here just trying to stay one step ahead this whole game here. Just seemed to have an answer for a lot of things that Emmanuel was trying to do as far as what they were able to do on offense. Now, Wingate here, this is a very interesting one, had 70 total rushing yards. Meanwhile, Emmanuel had negative 17 here, and I think that we can look at the box score and figure out who was the absolute game wrecker here. But Emmanuel, to their credit, really stuck in here as they threw for 267 yards. They forced 2 interceptions on the defensive side of the ball and made this game as close as it sounds. Both teams exchanging a very similar amount of punts here. And like I said, both teams exchanging interceptions in just kind of a wild series of events here. Something to note here as I look at the individual performances of this game is that Yvonne Brussel here had 10 sacks, 11 for loss, and 2 pass breakups. Meanwhile, Colorado represent Addie Cadwell here, 10 tackles herself, as well as an interception and 6 pass breakups on the defensive side of the ball. Just an absolute, despite the high scoring game here that resulted in a 32-27 win for Wingate here, both teams had defenses that were making plays here. You had Jamise Spivey here for Emmanuel, who had 10 flag pulls on her lonesome. You had Gwen Carter as well as Shane Cooper-Riley, both forcing interceptions, forcing turnovers for this team. But, I mean, it's hard to overlook 10 sacks for Yvonne here, just going absolutely berserk and terrorizing these poor Emmanuel quarterbacks. Now, despite all of those tackles for loss here, Lillian Stevenson still had a decent game, 26 of 50 for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns to just the 1 interception here. But taking way too many sacks here, they tried to alleviate some of the pressure here as Gwen Carter did have a rushing touchdown here. But that would not be enough here, especially for what this Wingate offense had cooking up. Now, despite Francis's 2 interceptions, she did throw 5 touchdowns here to 5 different receivers. You had Sarah Lebowich getting a 62-yard touchdown catch. Addison Morgan had a 28-yard reception as well as a touchdown catch. Cadwell found pay dirt. Kylie Watt found pay dirt. Kaylee Montalvo found pay dirt here. Just really spreading the wealth here and getting a lot of contributions. Meanwhile, Francis was able to advance and keep drives alive with her feet rushing for 45 yards on 13 attempts here. Something that I thought was really interesting as I look towards how this game kind of plays out here is the conversions here. Now, neither team was super successful on third down here. Wingate went 2 of 8. Meanwhile, Emmanuel went 4 of 18. But the fourth down conversions tell a serious tale as Emmanuel went 6 of 8 and Wingate went a perfect 3 of 3. And then obviously that Bristol stat line of sacks. Either way, however you chop it out, is just a crazy performance. One that, despite her career kind of being revolved around getting to the quarterback, is still a pretty damn crazy one nonetheless. But either way, it is Wingate who pulls that off and then also gives themselves the number 1 seed in this Conference Carolinas bracket that we have playing out this week. Back to other D2 action here. We are going to talk about California, Pennsylvania. The Vulcans here picking up 2 wins over Allegheny by a combined 51-6. You also had Mount St. Mary's, who fell to Montclair State 6-59, and Ursuline, who barely fell to Wittenberg 12-13. And on Sunday, April 12th, Post defeated Howard and Roxbury Community Colleges by a combined 87-0. Roberts Wesleyan improves to 7-0 with massive wins over Deauville and Damon University. And then Deauville bounces back and gets the best of Damon University 27-7. A huge stat line from this one is that Deauville forced 5 interceptions, with Alexis Brua getting 4 of those interceptions, one of those going back to the house, as well as a long rushing touchdown for Brua helps Deauville get this dub. And then Chestnut Hill loses to Holy Family University 34-0 here in this action. And those are all the scores from D2 here. And coming up next, I'm going to talk about the Conference Carolinas bracket, what that schedule looks like, and maybe some predictions as well. Hey y'all, it is Cody Stoffer here with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and boy, do I have a crazy game on tap for y'all as Conference Carolina foes here squared off in a crazy matchup between Lees-McRae and Ferrum here. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Now, keep in mind, these are 2 of the top teams in the Conference Carolinas here. Both have, kind of been in dogfights throughout this season for the Conference Carolinas here. And this was a big matchup for seeding as far as where they would sit in the tournament that I will talk about later on this episode. But anywho, let's go ahead and talk about how the Bobcats started off with the ball in the house of the Panthers here as Ferrum hosted this game. Now, they open with a completion down the seam, and then Hicks finds Hernandez de Leon on a deep shot down the left sideline that is caught and pushes them into Ferrum territory early. LMC then completes a pass right that sets up second and short, where the Bobcats take another shot, but this one falls incomplete, bringing up third down. Hicks, however, shows great anticipation on this next one, hitting down the seam just around the 5-yard line. There's going to be a short completion in between this and Mackenzie Hicks, rolling right, keeping it, sprinting, extending, and scoring. The PAT is no good, however, Lees-McRae leads 6-0. Now, Shreve and company come out to start the Ferrum drive, and they toss right, and that only picks up a couple, but draws a hold on the Bobcats that advances them to a first down from the 22. Shreve on this next play looks left, but then rolls out right outside of the pocket for a decent gain. 2 plays later, the Panthers draw a roughing the passer that gives them a fresh set of downs and only 5 yards until midfield. After a short run, Jalbert locks up a deep shot to force third down, but Ferrum narrowly picks up the first down on a short pass over the middle. Taylor here on first down gets to the other side of the field and makes a reception, swivels left and right just shy of the red zone before getting her flags pulled. Shreve is then going to roll right and find Kimmons, who wins the foot race down the right sideline for the touchdown and scores. And the lack of a converted PAT makes it a 6-6 tie. Wasting no time and picking up right from where she left off, Hernandez de Leon here makes another catch, this time on second down, advancing the Bobcats to the 33-yard line. And then another completion gets past midfield with 2 first downs in 2 plays. The Panthers defense feels a little bit like they're on their heels, but Wise here gets a good rush and bats the ball before it can get too far. Hicks, however, remains composed and rifles one down the middle to Kennedy Van Noy, who makes the catch and breaks ahead past the defense for a 39-yard catch and run for the score. The PAT is made by Van Noy on a crazy batted pass from her own teammate to take a 13-6 lead, momentum favoring Lees-McRae. Now on this next play, Shreve is going to keep up the big play pace of this game, taking off right and evading a flagpole or 2 all the way to the Panther 39-yard line just shy of midfield on the first play of the drive. A couple of non-gains lead to 3rd and 1, where Shreve rolls left and just lays an easy pass for Samantha Pitzer, who picks up a first down. Shreve is then going to throw a pass to the left hash that picks up a decent gain, but almost closes the first quarter with a scary pass and almost interception in double coverage. Coming out in the second quarter, facing 3rd and 7, Shreve tries to lay one out for Taylor, but it does not quite connect, and Ferrum will take a timeout on 4th down early in the second. Shreve is going to fire one over the middle to Pitzer, who falls and is stopped just shy of the first down, and the Bobcats force a turnover on downs. Now, to bounce back early, Wise does bat a ball on 2nd down, but on 3rd and long, Ferrum is going to rough the passer, and that's going to breathe new life into the Lees-McRae drive with a fresh set of downs and only 9 yards until midfield. Alvarado makes the next catch just 1 yard shy of midfield here, and then Van Noy catches the very next pass to get a first down to the 31 of Ferrum. Hicks continues her great start to this game, scrambling for about 5 yards, and then on the very next play, Alvarado catches the direct snap and throws it in one-on-one coverage down the left sideline, but Rogers makes an impeccable play to break up the pass. On 3rd down, however, the Bobcats go back to the well as Hicks throws a beautiful pass on a quarter route to Van Noy, who makes the catch and finds pay dirt for the TD. The BAT is no good, but it is a 19-6 two-score lead for Lees-McRae. Macy Taylor is going to start off this drive for the Panthers, taking a pitch for about 5 yards, and then a hook and ladder to her will also get to the 29. She then catches a check down and evades the flagpole and picks up a first down, and Lees-McRae is going to take a timeout with 6:53 here in the first half. Ferrum is going to snap to Shreve, who throws to Pitzer on a crosser, breaks to the left sideline, and up and in for the score. Crazy that these timeouts have not yielded the results that these teams are looking for, and so Ferrum capitalizes. The PAT is also good, and now it is 13-19, Ferrum trailing with about 6 minutes to go. On the ensuing drive, Hicks looks left, throws left, and picks up a first down to start the drive. The Bobcats offense continuing to click here. A direct snap right is going to pick up a few yards. That sets up 2nd and 8. But on the very next play, Hicks is going to wind up throw left and get intercepted by Anastasia Rogers here. And now the Panthers have less than 4 minutes with the ball, trying to tie or take a lead here. There's going to be an incompletion to start their drive and then a short pass. But on the very next play, Jaden Hires is going to make a crazy catch, leaving only 4 yards until midfield. Ferrum is going to come out quickly and line up on the ball here on 4th down, looking to go for it, and the pass is incomplete, giving Lees-McRae the ball right back inside of Panther territory. Now, they shrug off an incompletion before zipping one towards the right sideline, making it 3rd and 6 into the red zone with under 90 seconds to go. Hicks fires one over the middle, but the interception is dropped by the safety of Ferrum here, and LMC will take a timeout with about 1 minute to go to settle down and regroup. On 4th down, Hicks gets the snap, looks, clutches, fires right, and Kennedy Van Noy makes a hat trick stat line in the first half for the touchdown. But wait, the Stripes huddle up together, and the touchdown is waved off, pushing Lees-McRae back 5 yards, setting up 4th and 11 where Wise gets a sack with under a minute to go, giving the Panthers first down in Bobcats territory. A crazy swing of events from going up 2 scores to now giving Ferrum the ball inside of the Bobcats territory. Absolute madness ensuing in this game. Now a completion and lateral will push the Panthers inside of the 25 going in, and Ferrum will take their second to last timeout with 31 seconds remaining. On the next play, Hires is going to make the catch over the middle and break into the red zone, having her flag pulled at the 7, and then an incompletion on first down is going to leave just over 10 seconds remaining in the first half. Shreve is then going to come out, get the snap, fire to Pitzer, who breaks right and walks in for the score. Now the Bobcats defense responds huge here with a sack on the PAT, making no good, but it is now 19-19 with 8 seconds left. That's actually going to be our score heading into halftime here. Lees-McRae has to be scratching their heads and a little frustrated. They went from being up 26-13 at least to now heading into this halftime tied 19-19 with Ferrum starting with the ball in the second half. Don't worry, the craziness doesn't stop there as we come out of half and Ferrum here is going to pick up a first down on a pass to Hires here, going top shelf on a short route, making a move and picking up the first down. But the Lees-McRae defense would stiffen up and force a punt. Hicks here would pick up a first down on a quick pass to Alvarado to get the drive started. The direct snap would pick up a few more yards, and now they're facing second and a long 10 where Hicks takes a shot, but it falls incomplete. On the ensuing plays, a drop and a check down will not be enough to pick up the first down, and the Panthers will take back over on their 24-yard line. Shreve here is given a lot of time on first down here, scanning the field, reading, takes a shot downfield, and it is dropped in what could have been a touchdown here, but no dice. Regardless, football moves along, and it is second down, and Mackenzie Walker for Lees-McRae absolutely snuffs out the run play and records a tackle for loss, making it third and a very, very substantial amount of yards to gain here. Now, they're going to pass it real quickly to Brianna Kimmons. That makes for a more manageable 4th and 5. Shreve is forced to go to her check down, and Taylor, just being an absolute playmaker here, slips out of a flagpole and advances for a first down to the 33-yard line of Lees-McRae territory. Hires comes up and makes a catch on a dig route and takes a bump from the defense to advance them to the 20-yard line, putting them inside of the red zone here in the second half. Now, after an incompletion here, it's going to be second down, and Shreve is going to get the snap, drop back, look left, throw an absolute dot. An absolute dot for the score here. Hires on the catch here, takes the lead for Ferrum with 5 minutes remaining in the third quarter, and it is a 25-19 Ferrum lead. To start the drive, Alvarado is going to make the catch and extend for a first down, but the pass rush here for the Panthers helps force some neutral plays, including a check down that makes for a long third down. On this play, Hicks is going to roll right and commit the cardinal sin of QB, throwing left across her body, and that is easily picked off by Rodgers, who runs it back with a lateral, and that gets inside of the red zone. Now there's going to be a pass to Hires here to get inside of the 5-yard line, and I thought that there was going to be a penalty for a forward lateral here on Ferrum, as did the announcer, but apparently there is a penalty on Lees-McRae that must have predated the other penalty that both the announcer and I saw, and so that awards Ferrum a couple yards, and on the very next play, Rodgers cashes in on her interception on the end of a Shreve pass for 6 points. It is 31-19 Ferrum, but with the PAT good for one, it is 32-19 with 1 minute and 37 seconds here in the third quarter. Now it was Lees-McRae with a 2-score lead earlier in the first half, tried to take a 2-score lead into the second half, and now the pendulum has swung completely the opposite way through some crazy turnovers and great opportunistic defense from the Panthers to help give a 32-19 lead back to Ferrum on their home turf. But Hicks and De Leon get this drive started right with a catch to the left to the 22-yard line for a first down. Van Noy makes a nice catch and scampers ahead for a first down past midfield to the 35. The Bobcats going back to their playmakers who helped gave them a lead in the first half to get this drive rolling and get into Panther territory early in this drive. Hicks is then going to keep to herself and get to the 26-yard line for a gain of about 9, and that'll end the third quarter. It'll be 2nd and 6 to start the fourth quarter, and a quick pass right is swallowed up by Pitzer for no gain, making it third down just outside the red zone. Hicks on this very next play is going to get the snap and throw a quick pass to Ava Rivera for a first down into the red zone. And just like it is a casual game of catch in the backyard. Hicks winds up here and drops a beautiful pass to Hernandez de Leon for the score. And after the PAT is good, it is now 26-32, LMC trailing here, but within striking distance. On the first play, Ferrum is going to draw a penalty on illegal contact that picks up a first down outside of their own red zone. But on the very next play, Shreve absolutely telegraphs a pass, once again committing the second cardinal sin of a quarterback in this game, rolling right, throwing left, and it is picked off easily by Alvarado, who gives Lees-McRae possession with 13 minutes in the fourth quarter, just outside of the red zone. Hicks then zips an easy pass to Hernandez de Leon into the red zone with less than 10 yards, separating them from a tie game or even a lead pending the PAT. Alvarado is on the next play here, getting a catch and putting the Bobcats inside the 5-yard line. Hicks on this next play gets a snap and tries another pass, this one in heavy traffic, and Malaya Lotimatanga picks her off, giving the Panthers possession with 11 minutes to go and shutting down this red zone drive for the Bobcats. Just absolutely heartbreaking here. And the Panthers here trying to increase their lead, but starting off deep inside their territory. Pitzer here is going to make the very first catch and advance all the way to the 36-yard line, giving the Panthers breathing room and putting them in striking distance of midfield. Taylor is going to catch another pass and pick up a first down, but this drive is going to stall out as the Bobcats feed off of a very scary pass that was almost intercepted by them and eventually force a turnover on downs, giving them the ball at their 24-yard line. Alvarado is going to make a catch, picking up about 4 more, but Lees-McRae is going to get maybe a little too cute here, try a double pass, and on senior day, it is going to be the senior for Ferrum, Alexander, making the interception and give Ferrum the ball with 6 minutes on the 35-yard line going in. Now, the Panthers are taking their time on this drive, trying to eat up some clock, see if they can score with very little time left, and give Lees-McRae no shot in this game. And with that in mind, Shreve is going to find Hires to start the drive to the 26-yard line going in. Hires makes another catch, this time on the right, swerving ahead for a first down into the red zone and takes our clock under 5 minutes. There's going to be a drag route that picks up just a few yards outside the 10, and then a hook and ladder just barely gets a gain here, and Lees-McRae will use their first timeout with 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the game. The Lees-McRae defense regroups, gathers in, and makes an incredibly clutch stop here, forcing a turnover on downs with back-to-back swarming flagpoles by the defense, high instincts, high motor, and giving themselves a high tide to roll in on for the offense here with 2.5 minutes and starting on their own 5-yard line. However, the offense here struggling to get going as they have an uncharacteristic pair of drops to start the drive and face a 3rd and 15. A hook and ladder is shut down, and Ferrum takes a timeout just under the 2-minute warning here to make sure that they recoup, stay focused, and play prevent defense, and they stay disciplined on 4th down, breaking up the desperation shot to take over at the 5 with a fresh set of downs. Ferrum does a direct snap, and Lees-McRae is forced to burn a timeout. But on the next play, Shreve is going to fake the toss right that they'd been setting up, sprint upfield, evade one defender, reach, and score, icing this game with 1 minute and 31 seconds to make it a 38-26 lead. Now, McRae would not roll over. They would drive down the field, and Van Noy would get the hat trick that she was entitled to earlier with 10 seconds remaining, but it is too little too late as Lees-McRae falls 33-38 to Ferrum here. Now, both teams committing crazy, really bad turnovers at insanely, hilariously bad times throughout this game, but the Panthers here really holding tough, coming back on the next drive, and just making the right play on defense to help them pull out this game. They end up winning the turnover battle in this one, and that is going to be a huge reason on why they're able to pull this one out. But if I'm Lees-McRae, it is really hard to shake off, for me, at least watching this game, that overturned, I should say, touchdown that was a penalty, pushing them back. And I mean, that just momentum-wise just felt really debilitating. It felt like I had the wind knocked out of me here back in Colorado. I can't even imagine what that felt like. Just an absolute gut punch here. That I think this ballgame looks very, very different if Lees-McRae scores that touchdown and goes up 26-13. But you got to play the hand that you're dealt. Got to avoid these interceptions, especially the one in the red zone here where, Hicks throws it and Luti Matanga makes the pick here. Just really, really bad place for that turnover here. But both teams kind of exchanged very odd mistakes. Ferrum running hurry up in the first half and going forward out just before midfield was super duper weird to watch. Both of these quarterbacks rolling right and throwing an interception left like I was seeing double was a very weird thing. But hopefully they got that all out of their system, as they do have to look ahead to the bracket here that came out for the Conference Carolinas, and I will preview that in just a second here. But thank you for listening to my game recap of Ferrum beating Lees-McRae 38-33.
That'll do it for this episode of the Playmaker's Corner podcast. Thank you so much for rocking with us. Thursday, we have our rankings and recognitions, and we'll release our last rankings. Not ever for this year, but our second to last one. So the next rankings we'll release after this week will be after all the postseason stuff. So make sure you tune in for that. And then we'll be focusing more on the postseason on this next episode. Until then, we'll catch you next time.